Batman's Owl Godfather. Hello again, dear adventurers of the multiverse. Thanks for joining us once more on this epic journey. Remember, this story is pure science fiction from our wild imagination, so don't go trying to summon dragons in your backyard. The rights of this amazing novel belong entirely to its original author. We are only the narrators. Do you want more adventures? Show some love to our YouTube channel with a subscription and a like, and if you want exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting for you with open arms. Chapter 301 Bat City. What the hell is going on? Supergirl looked up. The Crimson Cross still hung high in the sky, the Dark Knight bound to it. But beside her stood another Dark Knight. At that moment, two bat monstrous beings had appeared in Gotham simultaneously. Even with her superhuman brain, she had no idea what was happening. The function of the psychic web, Bruce said casually. When the web goes out of control, it materializes powerful thoughts. The cross you see is merely a projection of my previous thoughts, Supergirl nodded, half understanding. She struggled to grasp the principle, but she accurately assessed the current situation. Even if she didn't understand, it wouldn't affect the overall situation. So, she simply nodded. Bruce didn't explain further. He had previously fallen into a terrifying illusion, his mind connected to the psychic web, causing his own vision to be projected into reality. The Crimson Cross now loomed large over Gotham, like the bat lantern that summons Batman. It would naturally draw all the villains within Gotham to this spot. A fierce battle was about to begin. And, with the existence of the psychic web, even greater surprises might occur after the battle. But thankfully, Supergirl is here. Bruce looked at Kayla, his tone suddenly becoming friendly. Supergirl, I want to ask you something. What's the estimated computing power of your Kryptonian brains? I don't know, Supergirl replied. But it's definitely better than Earthlings. That's enough. Bruce reached out, and a diary appeared out of thin air. Bruce handed it to Kayla. Hold this for me, he said. There's going to be a tough battle. Stay out of it. Wait for my signal, and I'll tell you what to do. A tough battle? Kayla was puzzled. If there was a battle, why wouldn't she be allowed to participate? Would that be the perfect stage for her? Could the Dark Knight want her to do some brain work? Of course, Kayla's doubts remained unanswered. Bruce's reasoning was simple. He knew the Martians who were about to appear had a distorted sense of self, believing themselves to be Gotham's villains. So, let Gotham handle Gotham's problems. Batman will see them off, hoping those villains can finally rest in peace. This was Bruce's final act of kindness. Supergirl had emerged from her terrifying illusion, but it was still difficult for her to enter Gotham. Bruce simply told her to wait, then turned and walked into Gotham himself. Bruce, like a lonely ghost, wandered through the foggy streets. A rustling sounded near his ears. Someone was approaching. Katoom, are you ready? Bruce whispered. Almost, the Owl's voice echoed in his heart. Gotham will remember this day. When those villains are completely gone, the era of Batman will finally end. In this world, the moment Batman died, an era had already ended. These villains became the remnants of the previous era. The one they waited for would never return, and the stage that once belonged to them no longer existed. The next Gotham would be Batwoman's era. Bruce's task now was to send those villains who had firmly chosen Batman away. Hey, the next second, a group of villains emerged from every corner of the fog, like demons pouring out from the depths of darkness. One after another, they appeared to greet Bruce's arrival. Little Bat, you're finally back. Bruce recognized the person walking in front of the villains, even without Katoom's introduction. It was the Joker. His pale face looked particularly eerie in the fog, and a scar at the corner of his mouth was permanently raised. He toyed with a bloody dagger in his hand, and his creepy laugh occasionally emanated. However, the Joker only glanced at Bruce, and his smile suddenly froze. It's not him. The man who appeared before him was not the Batman he had been waiting for. As Gotham's eternal enemy, even in the thick fog, the Joker only needed a glance to tell whether Batman was real or fake. Long time no see, Joker. Bruce looked at the Joker quietly. He can't make it. I'll give you a ride. Ha ha ha. The Joker laughed uncontrollably, his voice not sounding happy, but rather revealing a despair of despair. Since you're not him, there's no need to say anything more. The Joker wiped the tears of laughter from his eyes and raised his finger. You can go. At the signal, the villains behind him revealed their identities in the thick fog. First out was Mr. Freeze. His ice spear emitted a cold blue light in the mist, and his cooling device emitted a low hum. With each step, a thin layer of ice spread under his feet, making the surrounding fog feel a little cold. Next came Poison Ivy, her graceful figure, the vines wrapped around her body twisting in the mist as if alive. The vines were covered in spikes, their green venom glistening with a dangerous sheen. Her alluring features loomed in the mist, her eyes filled with hatred for Batman. Then came Two-Face. His face was savage, his half-disfigured features appearing even more terrifying in the mist. He clutched a handful of specially crafted coins, tossing and catching them repeatedly. Bane followed suit, his massive frame like a mountain, his muscles barely visible in the mist. The venom devices connected to his veins gave him immense strength, so much so that every step he took caused the ground to tremble. Killer Croc crawled out of a dark corner, his scaly body emitting a sickening odor in the mist. His teeth were sharp and massive, and a deep growl emanated from his mouth. His powerful limbs crawled across the ground, each movement carrying a powerful impact. Bruce stood there, saying nothing more. The villains before him were all visibly rotten, they were all fakes. Yet, deep within their self-image, they deeply believed themselves to be Batman's nemesis, a villain from Gotham. In that case, I'll send you off in Batman fashion, Bruce said coldly. Gotham City needs a little ritual now and then. Stop talking nonsense, the Joker, unable to contain himself, screamed and lunged at Bruce. With ghostly movements, he thrust his dagger toward Bruce's chest. Bruce remained calm, dodging to the side and swiping his batarang at the Joker's wrist. The Joker quickly withdrew, and the batarang grazed his wrist before embedding itself deeply into the nearby wall. Bruce backhanded the Joker with a punch, sending him flying into the sky like a kite with its string cut. Mr. Freeze, seeing his opportunity, raised his ice spear, unleashing a column of ice at Bruce. Bruce kicked off, leaping high into the air. The column of ice grazed his foot and struck the wall behind him, instantly freezing it into a vast expanse of icy crystals. Bruce flipped in midair, diving down at Mr. Freeze. With a powerful kick, he landed a precise kick on his refrigeration unit, instantly disabling it. Seeing this, Poison Ivy swung her vines, which seemed to have eyes, and clung to Bruce. Bruce's feet were entangled in the vines midair, and Poison Ivy yanked him hard, sending him plummeting to the ground. But just before hitting the ground, Bruce braced himself with his hands, did a backflip, and freed himself from the vines, simultaneously launching a smoke bomb at Poison Ivy. The smoke bomb exploded beneath Poison Ivy's feet, merging thick smoke with the surrounding fog. Seeing Bruce's ability to handle the situation with ease, Two-Face tossed a coin. The coin's fall indicated an attack, and Two-Face drew two specially crafted pistols from his waistband and fired at Bruce. Bruce, using the surrounding buildings and fog as cover, nimbly dove through the hail of bullets. Bullets grazed his body, striking the walls and ground in a shower of sparks and debris. Bane, observing Bruce being attacked by Two-Face, let out a deep roar and charged at him. His massive fist lashed out with immense force. Bruce dodged to the side, then quickly leaped onto a nearby ledge, using the terrain to his advantage to launch a powerful batarang towards Bane's head. Bane blocked the batarang with his arm, but was knocked back several steps by the force. Killer Croc lunged at Bruce head-on, his powerful body packing a powerful punch. Bruce calmly watched Croc approach. Just as Croc was about to pounce, he ducked and delivered a powerful knee to Croc's abdomen. Croc was sent flying backward, slamming heavily to the ground. In this fight, Bruce employed no extraordinary tactics, relying solely on physical strength. He wasn't even keen on using Hellbet's defensive tactics. Since he'd chosen Batman's way, the purer the better. A simple hand-to-hand fight. But even with that, the swarm of villains was no match for Bruce. It's still not authentic enough. Bruce stood on the dais, watching the defeated villains below. Now clad in his Hellbet armor, with a blessing of Wonder Woman, his physical strength had unconsciously increased to an astonishing level. It's my fault for not letting you experience the authentic Batfist, Bruce sighed. He'd tried his best, but trying to do better was impossible. So he apologized. On behalf of these villains who were waiting for Batman's return. The Joker scoffed, completely dismissing the apology. He'd already accepted reality. Batman wasn't coming back, and there was no point in him staying. That's it, the Joker muttered. The next moment, he pulled a pistol from his pocket, pointed it at his head, and without hesitation, fired. At that moment, Bruce looked up. Is it coming? At that moment, the tide of change in Gotham shifted. Following the Joker's suicide, his mad, twisted consciousness, fueled by an insatiable thirst for chaos, unleashed a wave of deranged laughter throughout Gotham, A sinister signal that began to spread to the minds of other villains. The Martians, transformed into villains, faced a mind web's call with no resistance. Their consciousnesses were successively ripped from the web and then reassembled. A vast vortex appeared in the sky, a collection of consciousnesses. As more and more villains were drawn in, this collection of consciousnesses began to expand and distort. It roiled through Gotham's darkness like a brewing storm. The malice, madness, resentment, and desire within each villain's consciousness intertwined and collided, generating a terrifying wave of energy. Ultimately, this connected collection of countless villains coalesced into a vast, mental monster. It towered into the clouds, its form vast and twisted, like a demon composed of all the darkness of Gotham. Its body was composed of countless fragments of consciousness, shimmering with eerie light, like a vast, flowing mosaic, each piece exuding the unique, sinister aura of a different villain. Its head, a gigantic, misshapen sphere, constantly flickered with the faces of various villains. The Joker's maniacal laughter, Mr. Freeze's coldness, Poison Ivy's allure, Two-Face's hideousness, and Bane's fury all appeared within it. The mind monster emitted a low, piercing hum, a commingled cry of countless villains. Its voice seemed to penetrate every inch of Gotham, inflicting a deep sense of fear in all who heard it. Its presence was like a nightmare rising from the deepest darkness, poised to engulf Gotham in endless darkness. It's time. At this moment, Bruce, without panic, raised his head and shouted to the sky. Supergirl, Kayla's super hearing naturally picked up the signal. She had been observing the battle, watching the Batman gain the upper hand, so Kayla wasn't particularly worried. But the subsequent mind fusion was beyond her wildest dreams. Kayla was completely lost for words. How could she possibly handle a monster formed by the power of her thoughts? She had no idea. And just then, the signal the Dark Knight had promised her arrived. I'm here, Kayla quickly responded. What do I do now? Open the diary, Bruce whispered. Just open it. Without hesitation, Kayla flipped open the diary and found a blank page. Just then, an owl flew from the pages and entered Kayla's mind. That's all, Bruce said calmly. A monster of the mind should be defeated with a mind. Hopefully, Supergirl's brain power will be enough to withstand the upcoming battle. Chapter 302 Bat City. The thought monster began to wreak havoc on the streets of Gotham. Every movement of its massive form shook the ground, and Gotham's aging buildings trembled in its shadow, crumbling masonry from their walls. Even the thick fog couldn't mask the oppressive force it posed. Bruce stood on a rooftop, gazing solemnly at this unprecedented threat. Gotham's Shadow, that's the name Bruce preferred to call the thought monster. It was an amalgamation of Gotham's villains, representing the darkness and evil of the city. Bruce observed the body, a fusion of consciousness, testing it with the speed force and Thor's hammer. As expected, the thought monster proved impervious to attack. Real-world forces were powerless to inflict any real damage. The key to a breakthrough lay in Kayla's hands. Bruce stepped away from the Gotham Shadow and returned to Supergirl's side. By then, Kayla had fallen into a dazed, trance-like state. Lost in her own thoughts, she could sense a nagging voice whispering in her ear. I've now connected you to the vast web of the mind, and you've become a key node, the voice said. Now, your thoughts will also possess the power to materialize. Who are you? Kayla couldn't help but ask. Oh, I'm your pure, innocent, clear-eyed, romantic, dreamy girlish heart, Katoom boasted. We've never had a proper chat before, but this is finally the chance. Nice to meet you, my girlish heart. Kayla was nearly horrified by this answer. Could someone explain to her why her girlish heart was a male voice? You're lying, Kayla retorted. You must be a man, then I'm your boyish heart. Okay. Forget the details. Let's get back to the point. Katoom forcibly changed the subject. He wondered what was wrong with Superwoman. She always veered off topic in the middle of a conversation. Now, try to stop this monster with your mind, Katoom said patiently. Conceive a superhero who can stop this monster. Make him tangible. The more realistic and detailed your imagination, the greater the power of your hallucinatory hero. This undoubtedly requires immense thought and imagination, and the ability to sustain this thought for a long time. Even Bruce couldn't do it. So Kayla had to do it. But Supergirl was also new to this kind of combat and had no confidence in herself. Can I do it? Yes, Katoom encouraged Kayla. Use your super brain and create that hero. Okay. There was no other way. Kayla clenched her fists. At this moment, she had to step up. She closed her eyes tightly, beads of sweat gradually beading on her forehead as she exerted her mental strength to the utmost. Imagine a hero who could defeat Gotham's shadow. Who else could it be? Kayla had no doubt in her mind. Bruce was ready, waiting for Kayla to strengthen him so he could transform into a Batman capable of confronting Gotham's shadow. To face Gotham's villains, he had to conjure up Batman. Bruce hadn't expected Kayla to conjure up another. However, Bruce's assumption proved to be unfounded. As Kayla's imagined superhero emerged, a signature red cape soared into the sky. He was a man, like a god on Earth, his powerful frame radiating boundless power. His gaze fixed firmly on the mind monster, fearless. Superman. At this crucial moment, Kayla's only savior was Superman. Bruce's eyes narrowed. Kayla had been in Gotham, heard the villains talk about Batman so many times, yet at this moment, she was still thinking of Superman? Supergirl is just too ignorant. He forced himself to think. If Supergirl knew Batman well enough, she'd surely understand that Batman is more reliable than Superman at this moment, Bruce pondered, as if trying to convince himself. But in the end, he had to admit that in this world, Superman was the undisputed guardian angel in people's hearts. Batman simply couldn't compete. Alice. Fueled by Supergirl's mental strength, Superman rushed towards the mind monster without hesitation. He flew towards Gotham's shadow like a cannonball, his powerful body carrying tremendous impact. Superman swung his fist angrily, smashing into Gotham Shadow's body, composed of fragments of consciousness. Gotham Shadow roared shrilly, waving its massive arms in an attempt to strike Superman, but Superman, with his agility, constantly shifted mid-air, continuing his fierce attack. Bruce was somewhat surprised to see this scene. At this moment, the battle against Gotham Shadow relied not on Superman's physical strength, but on the computing power of Supergirl's brain. And Kayla's performance was surprisingly good. Of course, this advantage was short-lived, as Gotham Shadow quickly counterattacked. Within its massive, misshapen head, the villains' faces twisted even more violently, as if roaring in anger. The Gotham Shadow suddenly opened its maw, unleashing a wave of black energy tinged with a pungent, rancid stench. Like a surging black tide, it swept towards Superman. Superman, unable to dodge, was struck by the wave, his once strong body flung back several meters, his glow dimming slightly. Hiss, Supergirl gasped, her whole body detached from her imagination. Simultaneously, the Superman illusion vanished. It's too hard, Kayla said with difficulty, clutching her forehead. I can't even imagine how strong Superman is. The limit I can imagine is just a little stronger than me. Defeat the Gotham Shadow with this level of skill is impossible. That's because you're mistaken. At this point, Katoom, impersonating Kayla's girlish heart, spoke again. Why are you thinking of taking on all this alone? Can't you make use of the Dark Knight next to you? Why should I want to do it alone? That's what you said. You said you're the only one left now. At that moment, Kayla thought, if that voice had a physical form, she would absolutely teach it a lesson without hesitation. Absolutely. But now wasn't the time to dwell on that. She had to focus on Gotham's shadow. Utilize the Dark Knight, Kayla asked, her strange thoughts slightly retracted. How? Buff him, give him the ability to hit thinking monsters, Katoom said. That way, you won't be fighting alone. The Dark Knight will exercise his own initiative, is that so? Kayla suddenly understood. That's right. If the Dark Knight could direct the details of the battle, all she had to do was constantly strengthen him. The difficulty of calculating and thinking suddenly dropped significantly. That's it, Kayla thought. But how do I strengthen the Dark Knight? She looked at the massive, mountainous Gotham Shadow, then at the Dark Knight in his technological suit. Then, Kayla thought of her good friend, Win, the nerdy guy who always had a bunch of robot figurines on his desk. What was his name? Kayla couldn't figure it out, but she knew what to do. She needed to imagine a giant robot piloted by the Dark Knight. Supergirl once again entered the world of her mind. She began constructing the enormous robot. First, the robot skeleton. Massive metal supports gradually took shape in her imagination, each one a precision-engineered structure, its connections seamless. Then the torso, limbs, head, weapons. Bruce felt countless points of light gathering around him. He gradually rose high into the sky, and a massive robot enveloped him, slowly rising from the ground. Initially, the robot was merely a few golden lines, then it became increasingly real. Gradually, its full form could be seen. The mecha glowed with a metallic sheen, its shell engraved with intricate patterns. Its eyes gleamed red, and it was equipped with terrifying weapon systems. Every movement of its joints was accompanied by a mechanical roar. From behind the mecha, a vast energy emanated, like a brilliant galaxy connecting heaven and earth, like the divine light of Bruce's ascension. The giant mecha slowly rose to its full form. It stood like a moving steel fortress, towering over the earth. Bruce appeared in the cockpit, a room filled with high-tech equipment. The dashboard flashed with lights, and the joystick lay at his fingertips. He was at a loss for words. Supergirl's idea had truly caught him off guard. This is how they're supposed to enhance their power. Never mind, whatever, after all, this massive mech could fight Gotham's shadow. Bruce gripped the joystick tightly, feeling the immense power at his command. I'll call you Titanbit. Bruce slowly settled into his state. Now, I attack in Titan form, he piloted Titanbit, striding towards the mind monster. Titanbit's legs dug deep footprints into the ground, each step carrying immense force. Bruce activated the high-energy particle cannon on Titanbit's right arm, and a dazzling white beam of energy shot towards Gotham's shadow like lightning. The energy beam struck Gotham's shadow, blasting a massive hole through his fragmented consciousness, sending debris flying everywhere. It worked. Supergirl's face lit up at the sight. This victory was far superior to Superman's earlier battle. His efforts were truly worthless. Enraged by the sudden attack, Gotham's shadow spun and pressed his massive body towards Titanbit. Bruce calmly controlled Titanbit, who bent his legs and, using the powerful momentum, leaped high, avoiding Gotham's shadow's attack. In mid-air, the thrusters on Titanbit's back erupted with blue flames, allowing Titanbit to flexibly flip through the air. Then, Titanbit extended its left arm, and a high-intensity laser sword erupted from its wrist. Bruce piloted Titanbit like a meteor, hurtling towards Gotham's shadow, the laser sword piercing Gotham's shadow's head. Gotham's shadow flailed his arms to block, but his arm and the laser sword collided, sending up a shower of dazzling sparks. The force feedback system in Titanbit's arm exerted immense pressure, but Bruce remained undeterred, pushing the laser sword forward. The laser sword slashed a deep gash on Gotham's shadow's arm, a black light flickering across the wound, as if in pain. Gotham's shadow let out a low roar, and black energy spheres began to gather around its body. These spheres spun and expanded, then launched towards Titanbit. Bruce quickly adjusted Titanbit's defenses, and a blue energy shield appeared around it. The energy sphere struck the shield, causing ripples to form, but it still stubbornly withstood the attack. Then, the moment the attack ended, Bruce launched a counterattack. A barrage of laser blasts pelted Gotham's shadow, instantly suppressing him. Great! Ho ha ha ha! Bruce, at this moment, finally had the look of a 14-year-old boy. He laughed heartily as he piloted the Titanbit. Supergirl, you're great for letting me drive the mech. Under the Titan Bat's fierce assault, Gotham's shadow would be crushed to death if he didn't strike back. Realizing this, the faces of the villains within him shifted, already figuring out a way to break free. Suddenly, Gotham's shadow stopped dodging and slowly opened its massive, terrifying maw, emanating a powerful suction force. Like a dark vortex, this suction force began to search every corner of Gotham for other Gotham villains and the resentment that lingered within its vast web of minds. As if summoned by some unknown force, the tiny resentments that had once lurked in the city's shadowy corners flew towards Gotham's shadow's mouth. The remnants of the evil consciousness of previously defeated villains were also pulled from ruins, basements, and other places. Like wisps of black smoke, they gathered in streams in the air and rushed towards Gotham's shadow's maw. As more resentment poured in, Gotham's shadow's body began to swell. The already distorted fragments of consciousness on its surface became even more disorganized, shimmering with an even more sinister light. Its strength continued to grow, and its previous injuries healed as before. Roar! At this moment, Gotham's shadow entered its second stage. Gotham's shadow's body became even larger, but its attack speed was even faster and its power was even greater. Each attack carried a devastating momentum. It finally turned into an invincible demon made of pure resentment. Bruce was not frightened. On the contrary, he controlled Titan Bat and rushed towards Gotham's shadow again. Titan Bat's foot thrusters sprayed at full force, rushing towards Gotham's shadow with a powerful impact. Come on, Bruce roared. He instantly activated Titan Bat's close combat mode, and two sharp energy blades suddenly popped out from Titan Bat's arms. Chapter 303 Bat City. Titanbit swung his arms across the air, two energy blades streaking through the air, slashing towards Gotham's shadow's abdomen. Seeing Titanbit charging, Gotham Shadow immediately swept forward with his massive arms. This time, his strength and speed were unmatched. His arms sliced through the air, triggering a series of sonic booms. Bruce controlled Titanic, causing it to pause mid-air and flip sideways, dodging Gotham Shadow's attack. The energy blades then slashed sideways at Gotham Shadow's arms. The energy blades collided with Gotham Shadow's arm, sending up a shower of black and white sparks. Although he successfully struck Gotham Shadow, Bruce felt his attack hadn't even penetrated his defenses. Supergirl, he used his telepathic link with Katoom to transmit his voice to Kayla. The mech's performance isn't keeping up. You need to increase your mental power. He had to visualize more details and maximize Titanbit's power within his computing power. Otherwise, this battle was impossible to win. I'm trying, Kayla panicked. While the Dark Knight's words weren't strictly accusatory, Supergirl still felt she was holding back. Think hard, she kept repeating them in her head, trying to bolster herself. She focused even more of her attention on building a stronger Titanbit. But that would take time. The battle was now extremely tense. The Gotham Shadow roared, opening its mouth to bite the Titanbit. Bruce quickly focused the Titanbit's shield energy on its head and maneuvered it backward. But the Gotham Shadow was incredibly fast, and the shield still gnawed, making a teeth-grinding scraping sound. The shield's energy was rapidly depleting. Bruce adjusted the Titanbit's energy distribution, unleashing even greater power from its leg thrusters, breaking free from the Gotham Shadow's grip. At this moment, he glanced over at Supergirl. Kayla, eyes closed, frowning, was working hard. Guess we need to buy some time, Bruce understood. He readjusted Titanbit's weapon systems, simultaneously boosting the power of its particle cannon and laser sword to maximum. Then he charged towards Gotham Shadow's collar. He knew this attack wouldn't destroy Gotham Shadow. But when the time came, there was no retreat. The amplified Gotham Shadow was enveloped in a sea of negative emotions, completely driven into frenzy. The countless villainous faces within its head, their expressions twisted with madness, rushed towards Bruce at an unimaginable speed. Every movement of its massive body shook the entire city. Gotham Shadow reached Titanbit in a flash. Looking out from the cockpit, Bruce couldn't even see Gotham Shadow's entire form. The immensity of its body was fully apparent. Gotham Shadow extended its claws and fiercely clawed at Titanbit's chest. The sharp claws collided with the armor's hull, making a sharp metallic sound and sending sparks flying. This time, the Gotham Shadow easily ripped through the Titanbit's outer armor, revealing the complex mechanical structure within. Bruce felt a powerful vibration within the Titanbit and attempted to control it to counterattack, but the Gotham Shadow gave him no chance. Its claws struck the Titanbit's arm, sending a powerful torque that twisted and deformed the arm's joints, severed some wiring, and caused the weapon systems on its arm to flicker and lose some functionality. Then, the Gotham Shadow opened its maw and bit down on the Titanbit's head. Its teeth clamped down, tearing at it with all its might. The Titanbit's head display began to flash, and various alarms blared in the cockpit. Supergirl's head suddenly stabbed with pain, and she couldn't help but open her eyes to see a disparate scene. The Gotham Shadow was dismantling the Titanbit's body with his bare hands. Dark Knight, Kayla screamed, feeling as if she were in a metallic nightmare, worrying for Bruce's safety. Then, a calm voice echoed in her ears. Why are you yelling? I'm not dead yet. Inside the cockpit, Bruce struggled to steady Titanbit, trying to escape Gotham Shadow's attack. But Gotham Shadow's power was too great, and its attacks intensified. Titanbit was slowly being destroyed under its onslaught. Its massive claws gripped Titanbit's left arm tightly, then twisted it with a forceful force. With a heart-wrenching metallic crack, the armor on Titanbit's left arm ripped apart like fragile iron. The hydraulic pipes and electrical wiring within were exposed, like blood vessels and nerves being ripped out of the body. Gotham Shadow then swung with his other claw, severing the wires and pipes in an instant. The severed arm clanged to the ground with a clang, sending a cloud of dust flying. Tisk, Bruce smacked his lips helplessly. With Titanbit's current capabilities, he could only watch as it ravaged him, unable to do anything. By this time, the joints of both Titanbit's arms were completely shattered, and parts were scattered everywhere. From the shoulder to the elbow, the armor gradually disintegrated into tatters, leaving only a few broken metal frames barely clinging to the Titanbat's main body. Seeing this, Supergirl almost completely forgot her mission and only thought of flying up to save the people. Katoom immediately stopped her. What's the point of you going up? If the Dark Knight wants to escape, No one can stop him, Katoom said sternly. The reason he didn't flee now is because he believes in you. He believes that even if the mech is dismantled, you can rebuild it, not just rebuild, but even make it stronger. Supergirl, don't let the Dark Knight down. Kira paused. The voice made sense. The mech was a creation of her imagination. Even if it was dismantled, so what? Just build another one. However, the new mech had to be more powerful than the previous one, otherwise it would be dismantled just as badly. By then, the Gotham Shadow had already torn a hole in the Titan Bat's chest armor. It shoved its claws into Titan Bat's chest and forcibly ripped out the protective power core within. The power core's light flickered briefly in Gotham Shadow's claws before extinguishing, instantly crippling Titan Bat's power systems. All the lights on Titan Bat dimmed, leaving only a few dim emergency lights flickering. Time was running out. Titan Bat had reached its limit, with no chance of gaining time. Kayla had to make a decision. Gotham Shadow grabbed Titan Bat's head and ripped off its outer covering, revealing the cockpit where Bruce sat. The cockpit glass began to crack, and the alarms grew faint and desperate. With a final, crisp snap, the glass shattered, and Titan Bat was completely dismantled, leaving Bruce exposed to Gotham Shadow. Not ready yet, Supergirl. Bruce's voice was tinged with resignation. Right now, Kayla roared. Improve your imagination, right? She finally gave it her all, ignoring the stabbing pain in her head and overworking her super brain. Isn't it just about creating a mech more powerful than Gotham's Shadow? I want to show you right now. Kira focused completely on the ruined Titanbot. In her mind's eye, every component and every circuit of the Titanbot was clearly visible. Elements that had once existed only in her mind began to materialize under the influence of Supergirl's mind. The Kryptonian supermind had finally begun to work. Those illusions of light and shadow slowly condensed into the texture of metal. The Titanbot's body began to repair itself. The broken frame of the mecha began to piece together, and the previously twisted and deformed areas were restored to their original state. Metal fragments torn by Gotham's Shadow flew from all directions, fitting seamlessly into the Titanbot's main body in the air. A new transformation began to take place. The Titanbot special shield reappeared, but it was no longer a simple blue barrier. Instead, it was like a deep blue nebula slowly flowing across the mecha's surface, each strand of flowing energy imbued with endless pressure. Boom! The nebula barrier trembled violently, sending the massive body of the Gotham Shadow flying backwards and landing on the ground far away, causing a tremor like an earthquake. Repairs to the Titan Bat continued. Its internal wiring and piping regenerated under the power of thought. A maze of cables, as if alive, weaved through the Titan Bat along predetermined routes. Hydraulic pipes were refilled, and various lines were connected to their corresponding equipment, allowing energy to flow. Finally, the Titan Bat's weapon system and power core were repaired. The new power core resembled a singularity that created the universe, emitting an extremely dazzling and incredibly stable light. It had completely freed itself from the constraints of traditional energy sources, freely manipulating the energy around it. From microscopic quantum energy to macroscopic cosmic rays, it could absorb and transform them at will. Bruce wondered if Supergirl had applied all her knowledge from Krypton to this mech. The weapon's light returned, the power core radiated a powerful surge of energy, and the cockpit's displays returned to normal brightness. Various indicators flashed, signaling the Titan Bat's return to life. Bruce sat in the cockpit of the restored Titan Bat, feeling the immense power returning to his grasp. Well done, Supergirl, Bruce praised generously. After all, the new Titan Bat's performance was beyond even Bruce's expectations. He maneuvered the Titan Bat back to its feet. My turn, Bruce whispered softly. Now, let's test this mech's capabilities. Bruce gripped the control stick and gave a sharp pull. Instantly, brilliant light erupted from the Titan Bat's joints. These rays, like divine chains, pulled the Titan Bat through unimaginable agility. Beyond the limits of physical machinery, the Titan Bat left a dazzling trail in the air like an ancient divine symbol. He teleported directly behind the shadow of Gotham, moving at a speed so fast that even Supergirl couldn't see. It was like a space jump. So powerful, Bruce piloted the Titanbot, charging at Gotham Shadow like a god harnessing the power of destruction and creation. The opponent had just struggled to his feet, unaware of the Titanbot's enhanced capabilities. Every movement Bruce made with the Titanbot resembled a divine dance, imbued with an unfathomable mystery and a powerful sense of oppression. Every blow from his fist against Gotham Shadow felt like a meteorite striking a planet, The vibrations felt across Gotham. Gotham's shadow couldn't even muster a fight back. You had a blast dismantling that mech just now, didn't you? Bruce decided to give Gotham's shadow a taste of his own medicine. He commanded the Titanbit, punching through Gotham's shadow's massive, unsightly form. Instead of retracting his fist, Bruce began to rub it inside. Then, feeling a grip on something, he yanked it hard. A consciousness was forcibly ripped free by the Titanbit. The creature struggled, trying to escape, but to no avail. Titanbit's palm gripped the consciousness tightly, crimson arcs of electricity flickering around it, suppressing its resistance. Gotham's shadow let out a chilling scream, and Bruce felt its pain deeply. Pain, that's right. Bruce looked at the consciousness. It glowed with a faint blue light, its form resembling a distorted humanoid, but its identity was unrecognizable. He wondered which villain it was. He'd judge later. Without pausing, Bruce once again controlled Titanbit and reached into the monster's body. Another villain consciousness had been located. This one was even more powerful than the previous one, surrounded by black smoke. It angrily attacked the mech's mechanical arms, trying to break free. But the Titanbit's strength was no match for it. Bruce yanked, and the villain consciousness was also pulled from the monster's body. The two consciousnesses collided and struggled within Titanbit's palm, trying to merge or escape, but the mech's unique energy field held them firmly in place. Then came the third, the fourth. With each villain's consciousness extracted, Gotham's shadow would wilted a little, until finally, only one consciousness remained within it. It was a pale soul, the core of Gotham's shadow. Even without being able to see the face, Bruce could recognize who this soul belonged to. The Joker. Next, it's a head-on confrontation between you and me. Titanbit suddenly reached out and grabbed the pale soul. In an instant, the arm of the Metro was like a bridge, connecting the Joker's consciousness to Bruce's. Bruce felt only a flash before his eyes. The next second, he appeared in a pure white world. Across from him was the Joker, sitting in a chair, firmly fixed in place by a straitjacket. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304, Bat City. What should I call you? Joker? Or Martian? Bruce approached the Joker and removed his gag. Whatever you want to call me. A broad smile spread across the Joker's pale, painted face. You're not him, and I don't care. That's good, Bruce said calmly. This pure white world was a unique place. It had no clear boundaries, and was surrounded by an endless stream of white light. This light flowed slowly like a liquid, each ray of light seemed alive, emitting a warm and mysterious aura. The moment Bruce entered this place, he understood the source. This space wasn't created by the Joker. It had always existed, and the Joker in himself had simply gained access. The person who could do this wasn't difficult to guess. Batman always has a backup plan, Bruce said. I just can't understand why he chose you. Then ask him yourself, the Joker said playfully. Ask him? Bruce frowned suddenly, and instinctively reacted. He turned sharply, just in time to avoid a beam of white light from behind. A deep voice slowly rang out, on the brightest day, there will be light. Bruce gazed intently, seeing the ground of the white space begin to bulge for no apparent reason, like mercury slowly solidifying into a solid mass. The bulge slowly took the form of a human figure. It resembled Batman, but strangely, his uniform wasn't black, but pure white. He recited an oath that sounded like divine words. To Bruce, the voice seemed to reach from eternity, stretching into the boundless future. On the brightest day, there will be light, cleanse the soul, and delusion will vanish, darkness descends, gaze upward, a new day descends, light without limit. At this moment, Bruce's gaze shifted quietly to the middle finger of the white Batman's right hand, where a white ring gleamed brightly. This was his final challenge, and Batman's final backup plan. The White Lantern Ring. In Bruce's mind, Katoom's voice pointed out the key point. Bruce, the space you are in now should be the interior of the White Lantern Ring. White Lantern? Bruce asked. Katoom, didn't you say there were only 7 kinds of lantern rings? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. Where was the white? Katoom seemed frustrated by Bruce's naivete. Don't take that kind of setting too seriously, said the owl. Superman once claimed to be the last Kryptonian, but what happened? The result is that to this day, no one can be sure how many Kryptonians have survived. A Kryptonian survivor appears every few days anyway. The Joker laughed behind Bruce. Great, great. The moment I've been waiting for is finally here. I just want to see Batman fight. The meaning of his words was self-evident. Bruce's mission now is to defeat this white Batman, who is like a guard program. As for the prize after victory, needless to say, it is the White Lantern ring. It's hard to believe that Batman had even calculated this far. White light is the first light of creation. It is essentially a combination of all the colors of the emotional spectrum. Katoom said in Bruce's mind, the White Lantern ring can control the emotional spectrum. Possessing the White Lantern is equivalent to possessing 7 lantern rings at the same time. The user of the White Lantern ring can generate and use the power of any color light on the emotional spectrum. It is also the most powerful light of life. Even if humanity on Earth becomes extinct, the White Lantern can revive it in an instant. However, possessing the White Lantern is not a good thing. Unlike other Lantern Ring Corps, the White Lantern has no guardians, no so-called leaders, but only one consciousness. That is its lantern beast, the spirit of existence. Those who wear the White Lantern will truly become immortal, but cannot act freely and must completely obey the will of the spirit of existence. This is equivalent to becoming a puppet of the Lantern Ring. But Batman himself hates losing his mind the most, but he dares to use this as a backup, Katoom analyzed, so this Lantern Ring must have had some problems, and it was left on Earth, severed from the spirit of existence. In other words, the power of this White Lantern may not be that strong, but after wearing it, the mind will not be controlled. There are pros and cons overall. Bruce thought about it and felt that this analysis made sense. But there are still hidden dangers. Who can guarantee that the White Lantern will not reconnect with the spirit of existence after losing contact with it? So we have to take precautions. Bruce decided to find an unlucky guy and let him wear the White Lantern. That way there will be no problem. Bruce put his attention back on this white space. The White Lantern Batman opposite is ready for battle. He exudes a mysterious white light all over his body, like a shining star, and that light seems to contain endless creativity. Come on, Bruce said softly. The battle started instantly. White Lantern Batman rushed up without any words. He waved his hands, and his powerful imagination was released like a flood. In an instant, the whole space seemed to tremble, and the air seemed to be ignited. Several extremely sharp lightsabers flashing with cold light appeared out of thin air. These lightsaber blades are like the purest crystal, with cold white light flowing on the blades, buzzing in the air, and shooting towards Bruce at a high speed. Wherever the lightsaber passed, the white space energy was cut into tiny cracks. Armor protection. Bruce whispered a spell. A transparent magical shield formed before him, and the lightsaber pierced the shield, sending up showers of magical sparks. However, White Lantern Batman gave Bruce no chance to breathe. His gaze fixed, and the white energy ground beneath his feet suddenly vibrated violently. Immediately, giant thorny vines burst from the earth. The vines quickly wrapped around Bruce, twisting and crawling through the white space, causing spatial energy to turmoil wherever they passed. Bruce suddenly leaped up, and a raging flame burst from his mouth, instantly expanding into a sea of fire, sweeping towards the vines. The flames were so intense that the surrounding white space was dyed orange-red, and the vines were instantly incinerated. The ashes drifted across the white space like black snowflakes. But as the flames died, White Lantern Batman created a swarm of bats made of light, which swooped down on Bruce like sharp arrows. Bruce's continuous defense and counterattacks gradually became too much. His magic was expended immensely, while the White Lantern Batman's imagination seemed boundless. This was a mind program Batman had deliberately created, a condensation of a lifetime of combat experience. The white space seemed to isolate him from outside forces, leaving Bruce with only his own skills to resist. The tide of battle slowly began to shift. The White Lantern Batman then conjured a massive ice wall, bearing down on Bruce. Bruce tried to levitate, flying into the air to avoid it, but the ice wall's immense speed still caught the edge of his clothing. A chill instantly spread through his body, and a thin layer of frost formed on his skin. Bruce was already at a disadvantage, panting heavily, his forehead drenched in sweat. He realized he couldn't continue like this. Otherwise, he would surely lose. He had to think of a way out quickly. Bruce's mind raced, and suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind, a daring one. He wasn't sure if it would work, but he had to try. If it worked, he could win. At this moment, White Lantern Batman created another group of mechanical puppets. They were huge, composed of a mixture of white light and metallic materials. The puppets walked towards Bruce with heavy steps, and every step made the space vibrate. Bruce took a deep breath and chose not to deal with the puppets. Instead, he quietly watched White Lantern Batman standing in the distance. He raised a finger and whispered, "Oblivion." The Oblivion spell turned into an invisible force, like a nimble snake, winding forward in the white space, aiming directly at the White Lantern Batman. The White Lantern Batman obviously didn't know how to guard against this move, and was hit directly by the Oblivion spell. For an instant, there was a brief blank in his mind, and the objects he had just imagined began to disappear. It worked. Bruce's eyes lit up. He was not sure before whether a created thinking program had memory. If so, erasing part of its memory is equivalent to directly erasing the preset program. Now it seems that Bruce's judgment is correct. He did not miss this opportunity, and waved his fingers again, throwing out golden magic ropes. The ropes quickly wrapped around the White Lantern Batman's body, binding him tightly. The White Lantern Batman could not move, and there was still confusion in his eyes, as if he had forgotten how to fight after being hit by the Oblivion spell. Bruce breathed a sigh of relief. "Is this a victory now?" "You cheated." A shrill voice came from behind. It was the Joker. He was fixed to a chair with a straitjacket, and his expression looked very disdainful. "You didn't defeat Batman with your own strength, but broke the rules of the game." This made the Joker very disgusted. He was very unhappy that Bruce and Batman had the same bad habit. That was not to play by the rules. The Joker had fought Batman for many years. Before each fight, the Joker would carefully prepare a set of rules of the game, such as getting 2 ships full of bombs, and then handing the remote control of the bomb to the other ship. He wanted to see the true choice of human nature in the face of death. As a result, Batman always broke his rules and was unwilling to enjoy the fun of the game with him. Unexpectedly, the guy dressed as Batman in front of him actually did such a thing. It was so boring. "Who told you this was a game?" Bruce sneered. "This is a battle that determines countless lives. We should try every possible way and use every possible means." The ability to use the Oblivion spell to resolve thought processes is also part of Bruce's strength. If you're unhappy, the Joker doesn't have to watch. Now, White Lantern Batman was bound by golden ropes, looking extremely depressed. He lowered his head and no longer responded. It was as if the program had been formatted. Bruce walked up to White Lantern Batman and effortlessly took the White Lantern ring from his hand. The moment the ring was removed, White Lantern Batman's figure immediately disintegrated, turning into countless tiny white light points, dissipating in the space. "What are you going to do next?" Katoom asked. "Will you wear this ring yourself, or have someone else wear it?" "Of course, have someone else wear it." Bruce stroked the White Lantern ring in his hand, and a strange feeling surged in his heart, as if he was holding not a ring, but a miniature galaxy. It exuded a powerful attraction, and Bruce could feel the huge energy contained in it, calling him to wear the ring. "Zern," Bruce suddenly said, "come out to work." As soon as the words fell, Bruce's eyes changed. He let out a soft tisk sound, and his whole body was extremely dissatisfied. "Every time you only think of me when it comes to this kind of time," Zorina said this, stretched out a finger, and put on the White Lantern ring. In an instant, the white space around Zubat underwent a huge change. The surroundings were still white, but there were substantial objects. Under Zubat's feet, it seemed as if he was stepping on a transparent white crystal. He could feel the gentle power fluctuations coming from his feet. In the distance, a huge white lighthouse suddenly stood up. It was the light of this lighthouse that illuminated every corner, making the surroundings full of white. The walls of the lighthouse were engraved with various patterns. These patterns depicted scenes of different creatures using White Lantern rings. They were either saving the world or fighting against powerful evil forces. "Bruce, you wait for me," Zubat saw those patterns and cursed. "If I get real power, I will make you the second personality right away." Zubat ascended the seemingly endless staircase, following the path of the lighthouse. Along the way, threads of white energy extended from the surrounding light, gently touching his body, or, of course, Bruce's body. As the threads touched Zubat, he felt a kind of telepathic connection, as if the White Lantern ring was conveying a message, either encouragement or warning. These two conflicting messages simultaneously made Zubat curious. Did the lighthouse want him to approach? But regardless of its willingness, he was determined to ascend. As he ascended, The surrounding white light seemed to grow increasingly intense, and soon, Zubat arrived at a gate shimmering with an intense white light. The light, as if tangible, radiated outward in waves. So mysterious, Zubat cursed softly. Undaunted, he pushed the door open. Beyond the door lay a vast, mysterious space. In its center, a towering throne stood majestically. Zubat's gaze was instantly drawn to the throne, and he slowly looked upward. Then, he saw the figure atop it. Chapter 305, Bat City. At first glance, Zubat thought he saw another Batman. But upon closer inspection, he realized it wasn't. Sitting on the throne was merely a skeleton. The skeleton exuded an ancient and mysterious aura, as if it had existed for countless ages. Zubat slowly approached the throne, examining the skeleton from a closer angle. The skeleton's suit indeed resembled Batman's. But the materials used were extremely primitive. The mask was made of tough animal hide, specially treated to preserve the edges of the hair. The cape was woven from the feathers of giant birds, while the armor consisted of layers of leather, held together by tough vines. The shoulders and chest of the armor were inlaid with polished shells. And at the belt, darts cut from stone were pinned. How could one describe this suit? Zubat wondered, if Batman had existed in ancient times, his suit would have looked like this. At this moment, a lantern ring emanating pure white light sat quietly on the skeleton's finger. The light seemed to possess an infinite magical power, captivating one's gaze. This was the true white lantern ring. Put it on, it will grant you boundless power, someone whispered in Zubat's ear. Zubat turned sharply to find Bruce had appeared beside him. The ghostly whisper had been emanating from Bruce. No, you're crazy. Zubat nearly lost control of his emotions and nearly punched him. Sorry, it was just a joke. Bruce waved his hand. Don't be angry, don't be angry. I just felt the atmosphere was right. There should have been a demonic whisper. With that, he turned to look at the skeleton. It was like an ancient Batman, making it hard for Bruce not to be intrigued. Zubat rubbed his ear. Bruce's breath had made it itchy. Of course, it could just be psychological. How did you get here? Zubat asked doubtfully. Shouldn't I be the only one to enter this white lantern ring's consciousness realm? I didn't. Bruce paused examining the skeleton, stood up, and prodded himself. His finger pierced his chest unhindered. What you see now is just an illusion. I'm still out there, Bruce said. Zubat, since you're my alter ego, how can you ask such a question? It makes us seem so distant. Of course I've already tampered with your personality, you just haven't noticed yet. Tampered with him? Zubat smiled outwardly, but inwardly cursed Bruce countless times. Damn it, Bruce, you're just worthy of me. His mind raced to think of when Bruce had done this, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find a single clue. Don't think about it. This isn't something we should be dwelling on right now, Bruce said casually, as if it were a trivial matter. He really thought it was a trivial matter. Keeping an eye on your alter ego, I bet everyone would do that. How long have you been spying on me? Batman was still a little worried. Could Bruce have heard everything he'd said earlier? Quite a while, Bruce said. So you've been eavesdropping on me? Batman asked. Don't be so nervous, Batman. I don't have any bad thoughts about you. Even when you said you wanted me to be your alter ego now that you had the power, I wasn't angry, was I? Bruce smiled and shook his head, feeling that his alter ego had overreacted. He reached out and patted Batman's shoulder symbolically, reassuring him. However, because this body was an illusion, Bruce couldn't actually touch Batman's shoulder. It was just a gesture. He returned his attention to the skeleton. It does look a lot like. Bruce twitched his chin, analyzing. From every angle, the suit's design bore a striking resemblance to Batman's. A thought struck him. Katoom. Bruce called out the owl's name, and Katoom appeared beside him with a thud. Batman's eyes widened. Wait, how could this dead owl even appear in his mind? Could Bruce be the only one spying on him? Bruce ignored the Batman's wild thoughts and checked with Katoom. I remember you saying there was a timeline where the Batman was transported back hundreds of thousands of years. Bruce pointed at the skeleton. Is that this Batman? No, Katoom shook his head decisively. I'd recognize that guy even if you were burned to ash. I'm 100% sure these aren't his bones. Bruce nodded, not questioning why, choosing to trust the owl's judgment. That's strange, Bruce said doubtfully. Who could this ancient Batman be? The Batman had been listening, and now his patience had finally broken. Stop, He interrupted Bruce and Katoom's conversation, his face dark. Isn't the most important thing right now for me to get the White Lantern ring? The ring still glowed on the skeleton's finger. No one's stopping you, Bruce asked, a puzzled look on his face. We're just illusions, and we can't stop you. Just do what you have to do. Why bother with us? Are you still expecting us to applaud you behind your back when you take off the ring? Zubat's face suddenly changed into a constipated look. He was questioning himself, wondering why he had this strange mentality, as if he wouldn't dare act without Bruce's approval. Had he been tamed by Bruce? Of course, Zubat's inner reflections were impossible to show on his face. He said coldly, with a stern face, I'm just used to respecting others. With that, he stepped forward, extended his hand, and prepared to remove the ring. Just as his fingers were about to touch the ring, a low humming sound echoed through the air, like a warning. Zubat's hand suddenly stopped, and he looked around, but he couldn't see anything unusual. However, the humming grew stronger, and Zubat felt a pain in his head as if it were being hit by a sledgehammer. What's wrong? Bruce asked, pretending to be concerned. There's a sound, Zubat gritted his teeth. The pain in his head was getting stronger and stronger, so strong that his consciousness could no longer compete with it. Bruce also put away his cynical attitude. Zubat's painful look did not seem fake. What did you hear? Bruce asked seriously. I heard it. Just as Zubat was about to explain further, the pain suddenly intensified several levels. Zubat felt as if his entire head was being torn in two, and a strange, unprecedented knowledge was flooding into his mind. Several images flashed before his eyes. In the first, the world seemed to be invaded by some kind of white, bone-spurred creature. They quickly emerged from underground around the world and, in the blink of an eye, spread to every human activity. The bone spurs exuded a foul odor, entangling buildings and parasitizing human bodies. Bone spurs continued to protrude from beneath the skin, causing painful struggles and desperate cries. The world fell into panic and chaos. Then the picture changed, and Zubat saw the second one. In this scene, people stood in the street with dull eyes, like computer-controlled puppets. Their bodies were connected to various wires, like marionettes being manipulated by an invisible force. A huge electronic screen in the sky flashed complex programs, and a giant eye monitored everything. Then, the scene changed again, to the third picture. The entire world was engulfed by a raging flood, transformed into a water world. The flood hit everything wantonly, completely erasing all traces of human existence. Zubat felt extremely suffocated just by looking at these scenes. Was this an illusion, or a possible future? He didn't know. Finally, the fourth picture appeared. This time the scene was no longer as desperate as before, but full of absurdity and bizarreness. In the city in front of the scene, all kinds of strange objects fell from the sky. The huge playing cards were like giant darts, falling one by one. The broken toy idols were the remains of the body that fell from the sky. With a strange breath, the toy train emitting black smoke made a strange woohoo sound and fell headfirst. The world seemed to have turned into a huge horror playground. Zubat couldn't figure out what these things he saw meant. He only knew that if the scene continued to play, his head would really explode. Bruce! He suddenly roared and punched himself on the head, which made Bruce, who was standing next to him, a little dazed. Has the Batzoo's illness reached this extent? Wait a minute, he wanted the Batzoo to stop and stop hurting himself, but the Batzoo's movements became faster and faster. He kept hitting and hitting more and more fiercely. Bruce understood a little. Are you trying to knock yourself out and let me, the main personality, take over the consciousness? This was the first time Bruce saw the Batzoo lose his composure like this. This was not his style. There must be a deeper meaning behind it. He said helplessly, you don't have to be so extreme. I will share your mind with you. The tricks Bruce had done in the Batzoo's personality before allowed him to share the Batzoo's memories and share the pressure of thinking. This was the last insurance measure. Bruce didn't want to use it unless it was absolutely necessary. But now he had to use it. Bruce established a connection with the Batzoo, and in an instant, Bruce immediately experienced the scenes that the other party saw. At the same time, the huge pain was also transmitted to Bruce's brain. Something is wrong. Bruce immediately noticed the abnormality and thought that the pain of thinking should not be borne by only himself and the Bat Zodiac. He made a prompt decision and connected with Katoom through telepathy. Fuck. Katoom instantly leaped 3 feet high, clutching his head and screaming. He was unprepared. Bruce's move was a deadly blow to Katoom. Bruce, can't you just be a human being? Katoom gritted his teeth, his entire body trembling. He jumped around in the space, trying to relieve the pain in his brain, looking a bit like a ball. Bruce's body was shaking too. We share the pain, he forced a smile. Now, the pain of Zuba was divided among the two men and the bird. And Katoom's brain was extraordinary. While resisting most of the pain, he was still able to stay awake and curse in a coherent manner. They didn't know how long they were in the intense pain. It could have been less than a minute, or it could have been more than a century. Finally, the pain subsided like a tide, and the two men and the bird collapsed to the ground. They gasped for breath, and it took a long time for them to come back to their senses. What was that just now? The pain finally subsided, and Zuba regained the ability to speak. I don't know. Bruce's mind was still buzzing, and he couldn't think deeply for a while. Only Katoom recovered the fastest. He thought about what he had just seen and thought of something. Maybe it's a scene from the future, Katoom whispered. Those scenes just now seemed to correspond to the abilities of a certain dark Batman. The first scene was a creature covered with bone spurs, as if it had been infected with the spores of Doomsday. This was a minor skill of the Ravager that was not worth mentioning. The second scene was humans being controlled by computers, which was something a killing machine could do. The third scene was a water world. Needless to say, it was naturally the drowned souls. As for the final fourth scene, the world turned into a horror playground, and the only person who could be immediately associated with it was the Joker. Or rather, the combination of the Joker and Batman, the Batman who laughs. The abilities of the Dark Batman, Bruce murmured, are they constantly destroying the world? Batboy's gaze shifted back to the skeleton of the ancient Batman, the white lantern ring gleaming on the skeleton's finger. If what they had just seen was the future, it could only be that the white lantern ring allowed them to see it. I don't think so. The Batman shook his head and said, don't forget, this white lantern ring only exists in Supergirl's world. Even if it allows us to see the future, we can only see the future of this world. Could a world be destroyed 4 times? Bruce admitted that what he said did make sense. A person cannot be killed twice, and the world cannot be destroyed 4 times at the same time. Without saying too much, just comparing the first 2 scenes, if all humans were infected by the Doomsday spores, the scene of computers controlling humans would not have been possible. However, what if the prophecy of the White Lantern ring is not for this world, but a prediction from our perspective? Bruce thought of something. Previously, when Batwoman was studying the remains of Martians, she found traces of genetic modification in them. The artificial Martian creatures contain the genes of the Dark Batman. In this case, the Dark Batman has already sneaked into this world. The scene in the scene is not impossible to appear. Chapter 306, Bat City. The atmosphere at the scene suddenly became tense. Katoom, a heartless figure, interrupted Bruce and Zuba's bitter musings. Well, whether those scenes will happen or not, it's still just speculation, Owl said. You two sitting here daydreaming won't lead to anything. Zuba, in particular, was particularly concerned. He'd been eager to obtain the White Lantern ring, but after a burst of noise and hallucinations, he suddenly stopped talking about it. Could he be scared? Of course, Zuba wasn't scared, he just hadn't recovered from the recent events. With Katoom's reminder, Zuba resumed his previous actions. This time, without any obstacles or surprises, he easily removed the White Lantern ring. The moment Zuba removed it, a soft light emanated from the ring, flickering and pulsing in his hand. Put it on. See what happens. Katoom, eager to watch the fun, urged Zuba to put it on. Bruce was also watching from the side, wanting to witness with his own eyes just how powerful the power of the 7-color spectrum could be. Zuba sighed softly, a little lamenting. Was his fate destined to be a tool under these two guys? He was still somewhat unwilling to accept this. A real man was born between heaven and earth. How could he be depressed and inferior to others for long? Unfortunately, he couldn't see any way to turn the situation around at the moment. Besides, Bruce wasn't in such a bad state that he needed to be abandoned. Zuba put the White Lantern ring on his finger, and pure white energy covered him, forming Batman's battle suit. Katoom looked at him expectantly. Do you feel any changes in your body? No. Zuba waved his hand, and countless white bats flew out from his fingertips. All I can sense now is the life force within this lantern ring. Your earlier judgment was correct. This ring isn't as powerful as the legends claim. It's incomplete, but that's enough, Katoom said. At least this life force can properly resolve this world's crisis. Batman wouldn't leave any useless backup plans. The life force represented by this incomplete white lantern ring wasn't enough to resurrect all the humans replaced by the Martians. After all, some of their bodies were no longer there. But it could still resurrect a few key figures. As for whom? At that moment, the two humans and the bird all had the same candidate in mind. Time to return to reality, Zubat sighed, turning to leave the world of the White Lantern Ring. But Katoom suddenly called out to him. Zubat turned and saw Owl's gaze fixed on the skeleton on the throne. "Since we're here, isn't it too much of a loss to just take a ring?" Katoom said. "Zubat, please bear with me and move this skeleton as well." Upon hearing this, Zubat's mind instantly lit up with questions. "No, are you serious?" He knew Katoom's greedy nature, but he had never imagined he would go this far. "Since you're here, you're even moving someone's body, what are you standing there for?" Katoom frowned. "Hurry up. Was I too kind to you earlier, and now you're feeling passive?" The owl grumbled, its tone already extremely unfriendly. "If that's the case, I need to issue new orders to Katoom. Ha, Zubat sneered. Did the owl think such a threat could frighten him? Did he really think he was afraid of Katoom? With this thought, Zubat straightened up, walked to the throne, and hefted the skeleton onto his shoulders. It wasn't that he wanted to obey Katoom's orders, it was mainly because he, too, was curious about the skeleton and wanted to study it later. That was all. A flash of white light flashed before Bruce, and he opened his eyes. Before him was a row of control interfaces, and he was back in the cockpit of the Titanbot. That was the real world. Across from him, the shadow of Gotham, now deprived of its villainous consciousness, was slowly dissipating. The Titanbot's hand still grasped the last pale consciousness. That was the Joker's final consciousness. Soon, the shadow of Gotham completely dissipated into nothingness, and soon after, the Titanbot's massive body began to undergo a strange transformation. It was like a computer model being gradually disassembled, its parts becoming illusory. The mecha began to deform like a melting candle, its outlines blurring until it gradually dissolved into a jumble of lines, like an unfinished sketch. Finally, these lines lingered briefly in the air, as if bidding a final farewell, and then vanished completely, as if they had never existed. Bruce's feet were once again on the ground. Supergirl ran towards him from a distance, her red cape billowing behind her. The battle was over, and the Titanbot no longer needed to rely on his mind to maintain his power. Bruce opened his hand, and a gem gleamed before him. The gem's surface was meticulously cut into countless facets, each a unique little world, each revealing the face of a Gotham villain. Reflected in the gem's strange light, these villains' features seemed distorted beyond recognition, as if cast under some unholy spell. Their expressions ranged from ferocious to sinister to deranged, each one a testament to past evil deeds. At the very center of the gem, a white lantern ring hovered quietly. A pure, white light emanated endlessly from its center. What surprised Bruce was that, nestled within the ring, was a miniature model of the Titanbot. Every detail had been meticulously crafted, a perfect replica of the original. By then, Supergirl had reached Bruce's side. Bruce couldn't continue exploring the gem, so he had to put it away for now, expecting to discuss it later. The battle between Titanbot and Gotham's shadow raged through the night. The sky gradually brightened, and the sun slowly rose over Gotham's skyline. Like countless golden swords, the sunlight gradually pierced the thick fog that enveloped Gotham. The outlines of Gotham's buildings gradually became clearer, with towering buildings and ancient clock towers emerging from the hazy mist. The dark corners of the streets, once shrouded in fog, were now touched by the sunlight, dispelling the shadows and allowing light to take over. It's finally over. Under the sunlight, Kayla's previously overdrawn mental energy gradually recovered. She smiled, a sense of accomplishment welling up in her. Supergirl had finally protected the world once again. Of course, there were still some Martians roaming Gotham City, but the most difficult psychic network had been destroyed, and all that remained was the cleanup. Admittedly, Kira was naive, unaware that the truly significant events were yet to come. What was the point of eliminating one Martian in Gotham? Their enemy was the entire world. The end. Bruce shook his head slowly. No, a new beginning. Supergirl clearly didn't understand. What's the beginning? She asked. Facing more enemies, Bruce thought for a moment and said, first, we have to disturb someone's sleep. The cleanup of Gotham City was indeed completed quickly. Although Supergirl was repeatedly defeated by some of the more powerful enemies, she had no problem clearing out the smaller ones. In less than a day, All the remaining Martians in Gotham were wiped out. Gotham City became a human city once again. But the price behind this was also extremely painful. After this attack, Gotham lost half of its population. In Katoom's words, it was like Thanos had snapped his fingers in Gotham. Don't be so sad, Bruce. Think on the bright side, Katoom soothed. At least Gotham's crime rate has dropped in half. That's something Batman hasn't even managed. As soon as the words left his mouth, Owl suddenly sensed something was amiss. Hey, wait, his little mind began to ponder. Indeed, the number of criminals in Gotham was now half, but so was the population. So, wouldn't the crime rate have changed? Well, Katoom sighed. At least now he understood one thing: Gotham was a place that even Thanos, armed with the Infinity Gauntlet, couldn't change. While the people of Gotham were still struggling to adjust to this drastic change and power was in a vacuum, Batwoman finally emerged from her coma. This was the only silver lining in this desperate moment. At least order was restored in Gotham. With Batwoman around, the citizens could maintain their last bit of hope. And Bruce knew that soon, another pillar of support for the people of Gotham would return. Late at night, darkness enveloped Gotham's cemetery, and an oppressive silence permeated the air. Batwoman, Bruce, and Katoom quietly arrived at Gotham City's cemetery. Many new tombstones had recently been erected, and flowers were placed before them, as the survivors paid tribute to their deceased loved ones. Batwoman's expression was extremely complicated at this moment. It was she who released the chemical gas into Gotham, revealing the true face of the Martians to everyone. Even though Bruce helped her eliminate the Martians, the disappearance of half of Gotham's population almost completely destroyed the city. It was all her fault. I'll never be as good as my cousin, Batwoman said, her head bowed, genuinely blaming herself. If it were him, he wouldn't have messed things up like this. Don't think so, Cousin Kate, Bruce soothed. At least you have good intentions, and Batman will mess things up too, Katoom whispered. Then the trouble might be even worse. They finally found Batman's grave. There was no name on the tombstone, only a short epitaph. Here lies a lonely child. The tombstone looked particularly forbidding in the dim moonlight, and the surrounding grass swayed gently in the night breeze, as if whispering stories of the past. Bruce's face was filled with complex expressions. He knew that if he had continued his life on the original path and hadn't met Katoom, the same words would have been written on his tombstone when he died many years later. But at least, he was no longer alone. Batwoman clenched her fists tightly, her eyes never leaving the tombstone. Get started, Cousin Kate. Bruce and Batwoman exchanged a glance, and without further ado, they began digging the grave. The clatter of tools against earth echoed through the silent cemetery, each stroke akin to knocking on the line between life and death. As they dug deeper, the earth gradually shifted, revealing the coffin containing Batman. The coffin exuded a stale air, as if it held all of Batman's memories and secrets. Even Bruce couldn't help but feel a little nervous. After all, the experience of digging one's own grave with one's own hands was something few could truly grasp. In reality, Bruce's desire to resurrect Batman wasn't a difficult one. With his Dionysus gene, resurrecting a few people wouldn't be a problem. The reason he hadn't done it before was due to deep-seated resistance. Batman had dedicated everything to Gotham, even his own life. And now, with Gotham in trouble, they were trying to resurrect Batman again. This was a stark reminder to Bruce that once he became Batman, even death wouldn't bring him peace. Furthermore, those resurrected by the Dionysus gene were immortal. This meant that once Batman was resurrected, even death would become a luxury. The day of liberation would never come. That's why Bruce initially refused to consider resurrecting Batman. But now, things had changed. Batman's white lantern ring, leaving behind him, signaled to those who would come after him that he would be resurrected. Since it was the true Master's will, Bruce no longer had any concerns. Batman's coffin lay before them. Batwoman, nervously, slowly opened the lid. The next moment, she was stunned by the sight. The coffin was empty. What's going on? Batwoman screamed, her voice echoing far into the empty night. In an instant, confusion, shock, and unease washed over Batwoman. She could find no signs of anyone having removed Batman's body. And yet, inside the coffin, there was nothing. I buried him with my own hands. Batwoman turned to look at Bruce, pointing her finger at the coffin, but her cousin's body was gone. Bruce still looked very calm, showing no panic or loss of composure. In fact, he had a very imaginative idea about the abnormal situation he saw. Katoom, Is the skeleton that the Bat-Zen brought out on you? What are you going to do? Katoom asked warily. Are you even thinking about the corpses in my collection? Don't play dumb, Bruce said in a deep voice. You know what I'm going to do. Chapter 307 Bat City. Alright, Katoom shrugged, resigned. But I have to warn you, it might not go smoothly. He fumbled with his wings among his feathers for a moment, then pulled out the intact skeleton from earlier. Clang, the owl held a skeleton overhead, and Bruce vaguely felt a light glow behind Katoom. Be careful, Bruce couldn't help but warn. This was most likely Batman's remains, and Bruce didn't want to see Katoom using it for any pranks. Don't be so nervous, it won't break. Katoom placed the skeleton on the ground, raised the hand and waved, as if greeting Bruce. It's stronger than you think. You could even use it as a specimen. Thanks, but forget it. Bruce decisively rejected the ridiculous suggestion. What a joke. He was Batman from the main world, after all. Using the remains of a Batman from another world as a specimen sounded a bit too bizarre, didn't he? Although Batboy did have a fleeting moment. Elsewhere, Batwoman gazed at the skeleton, her expression growing increasingly serious. Where did you get this skeleton? She quickly approached it, lowered her head, and examined it closely, her fingers rubbing against the bones, muttering to herself. Yes, there's indeed a spinal injury. It was caused by Bane. The fracture marks on the arm also match. His hand was broken. Every detail of the injuries on the skeleton matched Batman's. To Batwoman, there was little doubt that this skeleton was Batman's. But the question was, where did Bruce get it? That's a long story. Bruce crouched beside Batwoman, thinking of a chance to explain it in detail. For now, the focus should be on Batman. Bruce suddenly remembered something very important. This skeleton was taken from the White Lantern ring, and the White Lantern ring had once been in Batman's possession. This meant that Batman had likely seen this skeleton before, and it was impossible for him not to recognize it as his own body. Bruce wondered what the other person would think when they confirmed this. Perhaps even their outlook on life would be temporarily overturned. Bruce filled Batman's grave and returned to the Batcave with the skeleton. He explained the skeleton's origins to Batwoman. Kate didn't understand for a moment, thinking Bruce was telling a science fiction story. You're saying that Batman might not have died, but instead traveled hundreds of thousands of years into the past, and his remains have remained until now. Batwoman was unsure how to react. How could such a comic book scenario possibly happen to her? Bruce didn't rush Batwoman into accepting it. He gave her time. She would get used to the madness of this world. The instruments in the Batcave flickered with a cold light, whirring at high speed, various data scrolling across the screens. The skeleton, hundreds of thousands of years old, was placed in the center of the instruments, undergoing various tests. Bruce could safely resurrect Batman, but he wouldn't easily resurrect a skeleton hundreds of thousands of years old. He needed to make some preparations before proceeding. He stared intently at the screen, brow furrowed, trying to decipher more information from the complex data displayed on the instrument. Look here, Batwoman said, pointing to a set of data on the screen. Although the material of this equipment looks primitive, its molecular structure is similar to some of the high-strength materials we use today. This shows that Batman, even in ancient times, was still trying to reproduce modern technology. Bruce nodded slightly, not surprised. After all, it was Batman, and even after traveling to ancient times, he would want to do something that transcended time. This was reasonable. But that was not the point. Bruce's eyes fell on the belt of the ancient battlesuit, where there was a totem-like object. It was vaguely similar to Batman's logo, but it had obviously been modified. This totem pattern is not Batman's totem. It seems to have a different symbolic meaning, Bruce said. He couldn't understand why Batman would modify his own logo. As he continued to examine it in depth, Bruce made new discoveries. There were some strange scars on the skeleton. These scars were extremely small and did not look like they were caused by battle. It looks like some kind of ritual mark, Bruce speculated. Batwoman agreed. Her attention was now completely focused on the skeleton. In a trance, she seemed to see a flickering light. She rubbed her eyes, thinking it was dazzling. But when she looked again, she realized it wasn't. A faint glow indeed emanated from the area where Batman's skeleton lay. A similar light flickered on Bruce's chest. He held out the gem he had previously held. More precisely, it was the White Lantern ring within the gem. The skeleton resonated with it. The aura around the skeleton quickly began to spread, like ripples on a calm lake, spreading outward in circles. At the very center of the glow, a vague outline began to emerge. At first, it was a vague shadow, a phantom woven from interwoven light. Slowly, the outline became more distinct. The general shape of a head, body, and limbs could be seen, like a statue emerging from the mist. Then, details began to fill in the outline. The outline of the face became clear, and Batman's iconic firm chin and deep eye sockets could be seen, although it was only a spirit form made of light. He hovered above the skeleton, exuding a mysterious and dazed aura. Bruce and Batwoman watched this process unfold before their eyes, and they saw with their own eyes that Batman's soul appeared from nothing. How is this possible? Batwoman whispered in surprise. Bruce said nothing, staring at Batman's spirit, trying to find clues from the blurry face. Batman's spirit seemed to be observing everything around him, and finally his gaze fell on his own skeleton and the ancient battlesuit. Then he raised his head and stared at Bruce and Batwoman, his eyes full of confusion and bewilderment. Who am I? Batman's spirit made an ethereal sound, which echoed in the Batcave. He slowly turned his body made of light, looking at everything around him that was familiar and unfamiliar, but he had no memory connected with it. Batwoman was panicked when she saw this. She had seen clearly that the face of this spirit was her cousin. Batwoman turned off the instrument, approached Batman's spirit, and stretched out her hand to hug him. However, her hand went straight through the spirit, and the spirit seemed to be just a phantom, untouchable. At this moment, Batman's spirit seemed to be suddenly pulled by some unknown force, and his body began to slowly float towards the exit of the Batcave. His speed was getting faster and faster, as if swept by a gust of wind. Batman! Batwoman screamed. Bruce grabbed Kate's arm without hesitation, and a black cape appeared behind him. He flew out of the Batcave with Kate and chased after him. Batman's spirit shuttled over Gotham, like a lost ghost, floating between the tall buildings. Batman's spirit seemed unaware of Bruce and Batwoman chasing him closely. He simply flew in an unknown direction, gradually disappearing into the endless darkness of Gotham City. Bruce and Kate did not rush to catch up with Batman's spirit. They followed behind, wanting to see where he was going. They followed like this, and they didn't know how far they flew out of Gotham, until Batman's spirit landed at the edge of a huge lake. "Let's go down." Bruce and Kate landed immediately after. After they landed, they saw Batman's spirit lingering at the edge of the lake, the figure looking illusory and lonely in the moonlight. Batwoman slowly approached, her heart filled with worry and anxiety. "Batman, do you remember me? I'm your cousin." Batwoman asked softly, her voice echoing by the quiet lake. Batman's soul looked up, his eyes empty and confused. He looked at Batwoman quietly without any response, as if the person in front of him was just a stranger. Batwoman moved closer again, trying to make her voice gentler and more persuasive, in order to awaken Batman's memory. "You are Batman, the guardian of Gotham. You have been fighting against the forces of evil to protect this city." However, Batman's soul still did not respond. He just continued to walk slowly by the lake, his steps a little erratic, as if he was pulled by an invisible force. Batwoman followed closely behind him, refusing to give up. "We've been through so much together, those battles, those days guarding the light in the darkness, don't you remember?" Batman's soul suddenly stopped. He turned his head to look at Kate, his lips trembling slightly. There was a trace of confusion and pain in his eyes, as if he was trying to find something from the confused sea of consciousness, but found nothing. Batwoman reached out and wanted to touch Batman's soul, although she knew it might be in vain. When her hand got closer, she only felt a burst of icy air, which was the unique breath emitted by the soul. Batwoman's hand froze in midair, and the icy air seemed to penetrate into her heart along her fingertips, freezing her heart. At this time, Batman's soul also took a step back, looking at Kate's eyes, without any warmth between relatives. Batwoman slowly lowered her hand, her eyes full of despair. Her throat seemed to be choked by something, and she made a sound after a long while. "You really don't remember me?" Her voice was trembling, and it sounded particularly desolate by the silent lake. Batwoman's shoulders began to sway slightly, tears welling up in her eyes, and she tried hard not to let them fall. As the current guardian of Gotham, she should be strong. But her cousin's soul was right in front of her, but he no longer recognized her, which made her heart seem to be hit hard. Moreover, Batman's soul still had no reaction to Batwoman's loss of composure. Bruce slowly walked to Batwoman's side, looking at her desperate and sad look, his heart full of pity. He gently patted Batwoman's shoulder, trying to give her some comfort. "I know you are very sad now, And I hope Batman can return like you. Bruce's voice was low and steady, giving people a sense of security by the silent lake. But you see, letting his soul wander outside now is not a solution. His soul is very confused and fragile, and he may encounter unknown dangers here at any time. Batwoman raised her head, her eyes red, and looked at Bruce with a hint of doubt. Then what should I do? Bruce frowned slightly, his eyes revealing determination. I have an idea. We might as well put his soul away, so that we can find a safe place and slowly find a way to restore his memory. It just so happens that I happen to have a special container that can hold souls. Although this may be a bit risky, it is better than letting him wander here aimlessly. This so-called container is actually the gem. It is filled with the consciousness of countless Gotham villains. If Batman's soul enters it, he may feel at home. It can help him recover his memory. Batwoman hesitated. She looked at Batman's illusory and lonely soul in the distance, then turned her head to look at Bruce. Is it really a good idea to do this? Will he be willing to be put away by us? After all, he is now full of vigilance against us. It doesn't matter. Bruce answered subconsciously, but then quickly realized that the person in front of him was his cousin Kate, not Supergirl, and he couldn't be so unreasonable. He sighed softly and explained to Batwoman. This is the best solution we can think of at the moment. If we can use the resources and knowledge we have in a relatively controlled environment to study how to restore his memory, perhaps the chances of success will be greater. As for whether he is willing, I can only say that his consciousness is not clear now, and we can only do what is best for him first. Batwoman was silent for a moment, then slowly stood up. What Bruce said did make sense. She looked at Batman's soul and nodded. Okay. I'll do as you say. After getting Batwoman's consent, Bruce began the next action, showing great respect for Kate's opinion. If Kate disagreed, then he would have to do it secretly. The gem gleamed in the moonlight, like the shimmering lake in the distance. Katoom, he shouted in his heart. No problem. The owl appeared next to Batman's soul at some point, and he flapped his wings suddenly, casting the magic of camouflage. Batman's soul had no time to react before being hit hard by the wing. The next second, his soul directly collapsed. Fuck, Katoom suddenly widened his eyes and screamed. Chapter 308 Bat City. Katoom stared at his wings in disbelief. He had barely exerted any strength, so how had he managed to scatter Batman's soul? Were his wings already so powerful? Had he mastered his magic? Bruce and Batwoman, on the other side, were also stunned, having never expected such a development. Katoom's scalp tingled under the stare, and he shrank back, unable to find an excuse to shirk responsibility. But then, fortunately, the soul, which had been shattered into countless points of light, began to reunite. Katoom perked up immediately. Wait, there's a reversal. As he had predicted, the points of light slowly converged, forming Batman's soul once again. Batman remained dazed, seemingly unaware of what had just happened. Huh? Katoom breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, Batman hadn't been shattered by his blow. Otherwise, he would have had to go out and hide. It seems we can't use violence to contain Batman's soul, Katoom said. We need to think of something else. Since magic doesn't work, we can only try high-tech, Bruce said after a moment's thought. Katoom's move just now was truly terrifying, and Bruce didn't want the owl to come again. The Batcave was equipped with various high-tech devices, but they couldn't guide Batman's soul back now, so Katoom had to go and bring the equipment here. It wouldn't take much effort. Katoom separated from his position and returned with a small leather pouch tucked between his wings. The owl's movements were surprisingly quick, as if he had almost gotten into trouble and wanted to move on quickly. He dumped the contents of the pouch like he was taking out the trash, and the various devices instantly spread out across the floor. Batwoman was stunned by the sight. She didn't want to dwell on how a tiny owl could perform so many bizarre feats. After all, magic was beyond her comprehension. All Batwoman could do now was connect the various devices and add an external power source. Suddenly, the lakeside was filled with flickering lights, complex wiring, and various sophisticated instruments. Begin, Bruce said. He activated a device similar to a force field stabilizer, a device Batman had once used to study special force fields, though it wasn't yet fully developed. While Bruce wasn't a tech expert, he did have some understanding of the basic principles. He began to tweak the device's parameters, hoping to create some kind of attraction or resonance with Batman's soul. As he fiddled with the device, Batman's soul seemed to react to the surrounding high-tech equipment. Points of light flickered faintly around the soul, as if sensing something. Bruce noticed this change and adjusted the device even more intently. Suddenly, the stabilizer emitted an extremely weak pulse signal. As if finding its target, the signal shot straight towards Batman's soul. Batman's soul was enveloped by the pulse signal, as if shrouded in an invisible net. Seeing this, Katoom quickly took out a gem and approached the soul enveloped by the pulse signal. The gem seemed to sense the presence of Batman's soul, emitting a glow and generating a suction force. Driven by the combined power of the pulse signal and the gem's suction, Batman's soul slowly moved toward the gem. Batwoman watched nervously, fearing another mishap. However, everything went smoothly, and Batman's soul was gradually drawn into the gem. Bruce breathed a sigh of relief, finally avoiding a tragic scenario where Bruce had eliminated Batman. In the gem's central section, Batman's face appeared. He stood there, bewildered. The villains in the other sections involuntarily moved away from Batman's position, as if they were retreating from something deeply unlucky. It would likely take them a long time to get used to coexisting with Batman. Bruce put the gem away. He turned to look at Batwoman, their eyes meeting, and they both saw fatigue in their gazes. It had been a long night. Bruce was the first to break the silence, promising Batwoman, "I'll help him regain his memory." Batwoman stepped forward and patted Bruce on the shoulder. She didn't say anything, but her meaning was self-evident. It would be fine if Bruce could take Batman's soul away temporarily. If she were to handle it, she really wouldn't have the confidence to restore Batman's memory. Perhaps leaving everything to magic would produce unexpected miracles. Now, Bruce was leaving here again and heading to another world. After saying goodbye to Batwoman, Bruce returned to Harry's world. He and Katoom stood in the room, their eyes fixed on the gem containing Batman's soul on the table. "This situation is not really safe," Bruce suddenly said, "although the gem gives these souls a place to stay. After all, the gem was created by the White Lantern ring. Bruce didn't fully master it, so it was not safe after all. If possible, he still wanted to take these souls to a better place." Katoom thought about it and made a suggestion. "How about we imitate Voldemort's Horcruxes and place these souls in the diary?" Bruce frowned, looking at Katoom with suspicion. "That's a good idea, but would you do it?" "I think it should be fine," Katoom said, stroking his chin with his wing. "We're not making a real Horcrux, just a diary to hold souls. According to the Owl's concept, each page of the diary should contain a soul. That way, the consciousnesses wouldn't have to be crowded together, nor would they have to endure the fear of sharing a room with Batman." Katoom was even thinking that if he added dream magic, he might be able to create a world of his own for each consciousness and soul in the diary. Especially for Batman's soul. If you were exposed to familiar things for a long time, even if it was only in dreams, it would help him recover his memories. Katoom always acted on his ideas, with strong execution. He flew to the table, took the gem, and left a message, "I'll do it in a day." With that, he flew out of the room, disappearing into nowhere. Bruce stayed where he was, feeling something was amiss. Wait, dream magic? Bruce suddenly remembered the last time dream magic was performed at Hogwarts. It seemed to have affected the entire school. Could Katoom be trusted? Chapter 309 Hogwarts Pokemon. Katoom flew away with a gem, and Bruce couldn't find him for a while. Although they could communicate telepathically, if an owl didn't respond after reading it, Bruce couldn't do anything. Besides, he had other things to do right now. Bruce had just returned to Hogwarts when Harry came to visit. He looked worried, and Bruce guessed he already knew what the first task was. "Bruce, I have something important to tell you." Harry stood beside Bruce, looking around to make sure no one was around before continuing. "I know what the first task is," Harry said. Bruce nodded, indicating he was listening. If nothing unexpected happened, it should be dealing with dragons, Bruce thought. Sure enough, Harry's next words didn't surprise him. "I can't tell you how I know this, but please trust me," Harry said seriously. "Just last night, I saw a dragon in the Forbidden Forest." It was indeed a dragon, and Bruce was relieved. It seemed that the changes in the tournament hadn't been too drastic. "I see. Thank you for the information. It's crucial," Bruce whispered. "I heard previous tournaments were terrifying, with deaths. You must be careful, use your brain, and utilize your strengths. Take flying, for example." Harry was very skilled on a broomstick. In the book, he'd also used that same method to deflect the dragon. However, upon hearing Bruce's words, Harry suddenly shook his head. "No. Bruce, I haven't finished," Harry continued, "Dragons weren't the only ones I saw in the Forbidden Forest. I saw many other magical creatures, but it was the dragons that impressed me the most." What? Bruce felt a sense of both surprise and reason. Had the format changed? "Come on, Harry, don't rush. Let's go to my room and talk." Bruce put his arm around Harry's shoulders. "Describe to me the magical creatures you saw." Harry followed Bruce into the room. After they sat down, Harry's expression remained grave. He was clearly extremely worried about the upcoming competition, largely due to lack of confidence in his own abilities. "Keep it calm, Harry," Bruce soothed. "A certain amount of stress is fine, but not as anxious as you are right now. How about a piece of chocolate to calm you down?" He pulled a dark chocolate bar from his pocket and handed it to Harry, a trick he'd learned from Lupin. Harry took a bite, and his tense body relaxed a little. "Bruce, you don't know. I was completely terrified when I saw those magical creatures last night," Harry said with a lingering fear. "Hagrid, oh no, not Hagrid, I was alone. Anyway, those creatures weren't even taught in class yet." He was trying to hide the fact that it was Hagrid who showed him those creatures. But Bruce didn't really care. He just wanted to know what magical creatures Harry had seen. In fact, Bruce could have gotten the information himself, and he had only dragged Harry into the discussion because he wanted to help the frightened boy. Harry paused for a moment before recollecting. "There's a magical creature that looks like a large cat, but its body is covered in spikes, and it has a massive poison sac in its throat that flashes green. That's a venomous leopard," Bruce quickly concluded. "It's a very dangerous creature. Its venom is incredibly deadly, practically fatal to anyone who touches it. And they're actually asking students to deal with it." A venomous leopard is a level 5x magical creature. Normally, it would take over 100 skilled wizards to subdue one. Compared to venomous leopard, some species of dragons pale in comparison. Harry lowered his head as he listened to Bruce's words, thinking, Bruce truly knows a lot. He recognized the magical creature's true name so quickly. It was only after Hagrid's introduction that he realized just how dangerous this creature was. Perhaps Bruce was the one truly worthy of the title of champion. As for himself? Perhaps it was just an accident. Harry sighed inwardly, then returned to the topic, describing, "There's another magical creature that resembles a snake. It's enormous, with a 3-branched head and strange writing flickering on its body. That's a runospore." Bruce's expression grew serious. "It's also a very dangerous creature, very aggressive, despite their enormous size. Runospores are generally short-lived because, when out of reach of enemies, their 3 heads will attack each other. Their fangs are often deadly." "Is the school crazy?" Bruce couldn't help but remark. "They're really leaving us to deal with these." He was fine, but what about Harry? What about the students from the other schools? Just let them die? Harry nodded vigorously at this, clearly agreeing with Bruce's idea. Right, Harry suddenly remembered that he had seen another magical creature that Bruce would surely be interested in. There's another creature that looks like a giant bat. A black mist shrouds its body, with flashes of purple lightning from time to time. Its eyes are blood red. I feel like it can strike fear into anyone with just one glance, but I don't know its name. Big Bat? Bruce was really interested. But after thinking for a moment, he couldn't think of what Harry was talking about. Maybe it's some newly discovered magical creature. Bruce couldn't help but speculate. Otherwise, I must have heard of its name before. Maybe even catch one for fun. But Bruce couldn't help but feel that their assumptions about the tournament format were off. What was wrong? Bruce sat quietly on the other side, his fingers tapping lightly on the table, his mind racing. He listed the various magical creatures Harry had described in his mind and began to analyze the situation carefully. The more he thought about it, the more suspicious it seemed. The danger of these magical creatures was self-evident. It would be nearly impossible for any student to deal with them alone. This completely contradicted the original purpose of the school's Triwizard Tournament. After all, the school wouldn't deliberately put students in a mortal position. Bruce pondered this in his mind, remembering that while previous tournaments had been challenging, they were always within the students' capabilities. If the students were really forced to go up against these powerful magical creatures this time, they wouldn't stand a chance of winning. Moreover, the danger level of different magical creatures varied greatly. In this case, the outcome of the tournament might be decided at the draw. Would that be too unfair? Meanwhile, Harry's brow furrowed, filled with worry about the upcoming competition. His eyes were filled with uneasiness. He had no idea how to deal with those magical creatures. Harry had already started to think about some unrealistic problems. If I die, I wonder if they can bury me with Mom and Dad, Harry thought to himself. That wouldn't be so unacceptable. Thinking of this, he sighed again. If he could avoid death, it would be better not to die. Hagrid also told me not to be so nervous. Harry had completely forgotten to cover up for Hagrid. He whispered, he told me to learn more about the habits of those magical creatures, such as what they like. He couldn't figure out what Hagrid was hinting at. Was he trying to understand what the magical creatures like to eat, so he could feed them during the competition? The main point was that if they ate him, they wouldn't be able to eat him. Harry couldn't figure it out. However, Bruce's eyes lit up slightly, as if he had grasped some key information from Harry's mumbling. Understanding the preferences of the magical creatures? Isn't that a weakness? In an instant, Bruce felt he had the answer. He looked up at Harry and slowly expressed his thoughts. Harry, I think we may have been wrong. Perhaps the format of the competition doesn't require us to deal with these magical creatures. Harry looked up at this, a hint of anticipation flashing in his eyes. No need to deal with magical creatures? Really? Bruce continued, perhaps the first match will require us to choose one of these magical creatures and somehow make it our partner. Finally, the contestants will bring their partners to fight each other. That way, we can test our understanding and control of magical creatures without leaving us defenseless. Such speculation is obviously more reasonable. After all, Hogwarts will not let students go to die. Suddenly, Katoom's complaint sounded in Bruce's heart. What Pokemon? This guy has been eavesdropping. However, when Bruce wanted to talk to Katoom, the other party stopped talking. Read but not replied again. On the other side, Harry's eyes lit up after hearing what Bruce said. The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. You mean, we are not going to fight these dangerous magical creatures, but cooperate with them? This is possible. After all, the previous Triwizard tournament also had some unexpected competition systems. If it's a cooperation, then there's no need to worry about dying. Harry thought of the Runaspore. It was a snake after all, and he had a good relationship with snakes since childhood and could even communicate with them. Although this ability was a little different in Hogwarts and even caused some minor disturbances. But at this time, this might become an advantage for him. As long as he could say a few more good words, the Runaspore might be moved by him and cooperate with him. Harry finally felt relieved and no longer mourned his possible death in his heart. His mood instantly changed from the heavy worry before to a lot more relaxed. He looked at Bruce, and then suggested that they go together to find information about those magical creatures. After all, one more person means one more strength, and two people searching together might find more useful information. But Bruce refused him. Can you protect yourself, Harry? Bruce said helplessly. Even if we are from the same school, we will still become opponents on the field. Do you really want to be so unreserved with me? You should at least prepare some secret weapons that no one else knows about. After hearing this, Harry woke up from his dream. Yes, that's the truth. Information can be shared in the early stages, but when it comes to the competition, it all depends on your own ability. After all, Harry also has a little expectation of victory in his heart, and he is unwilling to just be a runner-up. In this case, he must keep his tactics secret. I understand, Bruce. Thank you for your reminder. You are such a principled person. Harry said goodbye to Bruce. There was no reason to stay any longer. His figure gradually left the room, leaving Bruce sitting alone. Bruce sat for a while, then straightened his clothes and went out. He walked in one direction, which was Professor Gale's office. It had been a long time since he last saw the old man. When Bruce entered Professor Gale's office, he found that he was busy. He was sitting at the desk, holding an exquisite feather pen in his hand, writing carefully in a diary with exquisite patterns. The room was filled with a faint scent of ink, and the surrounding bookshelves were filled with various magical books. There was no longer the style of the dark magicians before. Professor Gale also started writing in his diary. Bruce thought to himself that the professor must have had a good life recently, otherwise he would not want to record it. You kid has been getting more and more outrageous recently. Professor Gale finished writing the last stroke and then looked up at Bruce. He said unhappily, now you don't even knock on the door when you enter my office. You have no manners at all, because the situation is urgent. Bruce had a deadpan expression. I was dying, so I didn't have time to knock on the door. What do you mean by dying? It's just about the championship. Gale found it funny. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his fingers. Looking at your expression, you've already guessed the rules of the first game, right? I guessed a little, But not much. Bruce pulled over a chair and sat down opposite Professor Gale. Originally I was only 70% sure, but now that you say it, my guess is probably right. Then why did you come to me? Gale asked. Why don't you hurry up and prepare? Do you think I will break the rules to help you? Because there's one thing I don't quite understand. Bruce asked straight to the point. Professor, where did that big bat come from? That's right. This is the only thing he can't figure out. Bruce has never seen any relevant records about the strange bat that Harry mentioned. This is very problematic. Bruce is confident that if even he doesn't know about the magical creature, then other warriors who are a few years older than him can't know about it either. This kind of creature seems to appear out of thin air, and the purpose of its existence is to mess with a player's mentality. Instead of thinking this way, Bruce might as well believe that the appearance of the bat has another deeper meaning. Chapter 310 The First Project. Sometimes I feel your observations are a little too sharp. Professor Gale shook his head. Okay, I admit, that bat isn't a naturally occurring magical creature, but rather a creation of magic. In other words, a purely magical creature. Bruce thought, as expected, and continued, Professor Gale, if I ask you about the tournament's purpose in creating this magical creature, will you tell me? What do you think? Professor Gale spread his hands, his attitude clear. In truth, ever since reconciling with Dumbledore, Grindelwald had settled into a retirement mentality. His once reserved demeanor had softened considerably, and he no longer cared about certain things. He no longer harbored any rebellious thoughts about Dumbledore's instructions. He drank tea, taught, and occasionally visited the headmaster's office to write in his diary. Life was pretty good. This meant he truly had no intention of breaking the rules and sharing more information with Bruce. If you put it that way, I can't help you, Bruce sighed. Then let me ask you another question. What information about this bat is there that you absolutely won't tell me? Well, Professor Gale dragged out his words, then said, I'll never tell you. Don't try to tame that bat. It won't cooperate with anyone. Bruce noticed a detail in Professor Gale's words. In the English context, it's pronounced differently from it, and it carries a different meaning. Professor Gale was hinting to Bruce that a bat had its own personality. Bruce nodded, his face expressionless. Since you're unwilling to break the rules and won't tell me anything, I can only take my leave. That's right. Prepare honestly and don't try to be clever. Professor Gale smiled. All right, get out of here. He still had to write in his diary. Bruce stood up and glanced at the diary. He didn't see anything specific, but he saw the name of a certain principal appearing too many times in the diary. Bruce wasn't stressed about the upcoming tournament. The next day, Katoom flew back, clutching a notebook in his claws. It's done. He tossed the notebook in front of Bruce. It was a little harder than I thought, but I'm a bit handy. Bruce took the notebook. The cover looked incredibly old, not like it was newly made. This is a little design of mine, Katoom explained. A book that seals souls has to have a bit of age, right? He stood beside Bruce, as if waiting for Bruce's praise. You're worthy, Bruce said casually, then flipped open the notebook. In an instant, he seemed to see countless familiar faces. Between the pages, the Joker's crazed soul twisted like a leaping green flame, Poison Ivy's soul, like a thorny green vine, exuded deadly temptation and dangerous vitality, and Two-Face's soul, half light, half dark. The souls of all the villains appeared before Bruce. Then, they faded into silence again, leaving only the withered pages. Bruce flipped to the last page, where Batman's lost soul slept. It had to be said that Katoom's finished product was truly excellent. Previously, those souls and consciousnesses sealed within the gemstone had been completely uncontrollable. Now, with Katoom's notebook, at least nothing serious would happen. Bruce put the soul notebook away, finally feeling a little more at ease. Now, he could focus on the championship. The day of the championship arrived quickly. The Quidditch pitch had been converted into a playing field, and the stands surrounding it were filled with students, teachers, and members of the magical community from all over. But Bruce was puzzled. The center of the field was empty, with only a crystal ball placed in the center. A strange light flickered in the sky, a magical curtain forming, allowing everyone to see the details of the field. Ludo Bagman, director of the Department of Physical Education and Sports, stood on a high platform in the center of the field. He waved his wand, and a golden light shot up into the sky, instantly capturing everyone's attention. Welcome everyone to the tournament, his voice carried across the entire arena via magical amplification. Today, These outstanding young wizards will showcase their magical skills, wisdom, and courage. This is more than just a competition, it's an exploration of the limits of magic. A roar of applause erupted from the stands, reaching the contestants' waiting tent. Bruce sat on a bench, Harry beside him. The boy who lived seemed a bit lost in thought, mumbling to himself as if reciting a spell. "You still seem nervous," Bruce couldn't help but ask. Harry, hearing Bruce's words, turned to look at him, forcing a smile. "Actually, I'm feeling much better now," he said. "But stress isn't something you can just shake off, I understand." Bruce patted Harry's shoulder, trying to comfort him. Just then, the tent curtain parted, and a house elf entered, carrying 2 steaming potions. "Gentlemen, this is a tranquilizing potion that Mr. Bagman ordered. He hopes you can relax and compete well." "Huh?" Bruce frowned. He had never heard of such an arrangement. "Are you sure Mr. Bagman prepared this?" Bruce asked the elf. "Isn't it cheating?" "No, sir, every contestant has one," the elf explained. "Is that so?" Bruce still felt a little unconvinced. He took the potion and sniffed it. He could almost tell what it was made of. They were all normal potion ingredients, nothing toxic. Sunflower orchid, leech juice, salamander blood. Wait, salamander blood? Isn't that what enhancers are made of? "Are you sure every contestant has this? Is it an official arrangement?" Bruce asked again. This time, the elf was clearly frightened. He stammered, "Yes, sir, I can't lie." "All right, Bruce, I know you're cautious, but house elves won't hurt anyone," Harry said to Bruce from the sidelines. He took the tranquilizing potion and downed it in one gulp. A warm feeling spread through his stomach, and Harry's expression eased a little. "See, there's nothing wrong," Harry smiled brightly at Bruce. On the field, Dumbledore stood up beside Bagman and waved his wand. The crystal ball in the center of the field began to shimmer. The previously empty field suddenly became a series of complex magical runes, shimmering with a blue light and spreading. Bagman's voice rang out again, "Young wizards, the tournament is about to begin. Please step forward and touch this crystal ball." As he spoke, countless fireworks rose from behind him. The 7th tournament had begun. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311 The World in a Bottle. Bruce walked out of the waiting tent and into the center of the field. He looked up and saw the crowd in the stands cheering with joy. The roars surged like a surging wave, one after another, incredibly powerful. Beside him, Harry stopped shaking and instead held his head high, seemingly inspired by the atmosphere. Perhaps it was the calming potion that finally gave him a bit of confidence. Bruce hadn't drunk the stuff, he was very careful about what went into his stomach. With the whole crowd watching, he approached the crystal ball. "You want us to touch it, right?" Harry asked, resignedly extending his hand to touch it. "Wait a minute," Bruce suddenly said. "Let's do it together." He thought back to the original timeline. This crystal ball had better not be a portkey. He and Harry could touch it together. If anything went wrong, at least he could get Harry back. Harry didn't see anything wrong with this and nodded. Okay then, he and Bruce each touched one side of the crystal ball. A second later, a flash of white light flashed before their eyes. When it faded, they emerged into an unfamiliar place. It was an island, covered in dense forest. Bruce stood on the beach, the sand beneath his feet fine and warm, the salty sea breeze blowing in his face. He surveyed his surroundings. From the distant forest came strange cries, like the roar of some immense creature, interspersed with the chirping of smaller creatures. Harry appeared beside Bruce at the same moment, nervously sidling up to him, still a little confused. He whispered, "Where's this? Wasn't this the Quidditch pitch?" Where had they been transported to? Bruce looked up at the sky. A transparent, crystal-like dome enveloped the entire island. Their location was obvious. "We're inside a crystal ball," Bruce exclaimed. "This tournament is truly a grand initiative." They've built a small ecosystem right inside the crystal ball. It was like putting the world in a bottle. At this moment, above the Quidditch pitch, the magic curtain reflected Bruce and Harry's current situation. What kind of magic is this? Ron's eyes widened in disbelief. A crystal ball, with such a vast space inside? Maybe a shrinking spell, Hermione couldn't recognize it. Or perhaps some kind of combined space transformation and construction spell, she speculated, her brow furrowed, her eyes fixed on the magic curtain. On the podium, Karkaroff leaned over to Dumbledore and asked, "Is this your work?" "Of course not," Dumbledore smiled. "With my abilities alone, how could I possibly create such a vivid little world?" His gaze fell through his crescent-shaped glasses on the professor's chair. Grindelwald stared at the magic curtain with boredom, muttering, "Little Bruce, don't let me down." On the island within the crystal ball, Bruce and Harry were exploring their surroundings. They slowly made their way along the beach, Harry glancing back from time to time. The transparent dome gave him a sense of invisible oppression. "We didn't receive any further explanation of the rules after entering the crystal ball," Bruce said calmly. "This means that this competition tests observation and intelligence skills in addition to magical prowess. More clues to the competition must be hidden within the island itself." In that case, Bruce realized they needed to gain a basic understanding of the island's topography. He bent down, picked up a branch, and began to draw a map on the sand. Harry watched from the side. In a matter of seconds, Bruce mapped out the route they had taken and some of the surrounding features. His memory was astonishing. At that moment, Harry thought to himself, thank goodness he and Bruce had landed in the same place. If he had been alone in a completely unfamiliar environment, he would have been overwhelmed and embarrassed himself in the competition. Just then, a small, sheep-like creature, about the size of a puppy, with a lion's head and a long, scaly tail, darted out from the dense forest. It stopped in front of the two of them, observing them curiously. "How cute!" Harry's eyes lit up. Just as he was about to reach out to touch it, Bruce grabbed him. "Don't touch it," Bruce said sternly. "It's a chimera cub." "Chimera?" Harry abruptly retracted his hand. He knew this magical creature was inherently evil, bloodthirsty, and extremely dangerous. Hagrid had longed to raise one, but its eggs were classified as Class A prohibited goods, making them impossible to obtain. He never expected to encounter one here. The little chimera was quite intelligent, seemingly understanding Bruce's words. It snorted in dissatisfaction and turned and ran away. "We have to move," Bruce said. A chimera cub wouldn't be here alone. Its parents must be nearby. While destroying a magical creature wouldn't be a problem for Bruce, he had just entered the crystal ball and didn't want to expose his strength too early, so he preferred to avoid trouble. Bruce led Harry deeper into the forest and discovered a gurgling stream. The water was crystal clear, yet it emitted a faint fluorescent light. Bruce crouched down and gently touched the stream with his hand, feeling a strange magical energy spread through his fingers. "There's something wrong with this stream. It seems to be contaminated by something." Bruce stood up and looked along the stream, as if trying to find its source. If nothing unexpected happened, there was probably a powerful magical creature upstream. Its body fluids had contaminated the stream, causing it to glow. This water was absolutely undrinkable. Just then, the sky suddenly darkened, and the once clear sky was quickly covered by dark clouds. A low rumbling sound was heard, as if something huge was moving through the clouds. "Is it going to rain?" Harry asked anxiously. "Not likely." Bruce watched the sky warily. Suddenly, a huge dragon swooped down from the clouds. Its bloody maw opened and spewed out scorching flames. "Get out of the way," Bruce shouted, pushing Harry to the side behind a large tree and quickly dodging himself. The flames from the dragon burned a charred trail on the ground, and countless trees along the way were set ablaze. On the Quidditch field, the stands instantly erupted in exclamations and worries. They hadn't expected the intensity of the championship to be so much higher than people had imagined. The contestants were still students, and they had to face a dragon in the first round? Could they handle it? Inside the crystal ball, Bruce looked solemnly at the dragon flying in the sky. He suddenly had a feeling that the dragon's condition seemed to be a little off. It seemed to be running away. Chapter 312 Fire Dragon and Harry. The dragon roared past Bruce and Harry, its flames splashing onto several nearby boulders, causing them to explode. "Looks like it's being chased by something," Harry shouted, having noticed something was amiss. Bruce remained silent, looking off into the distance. He saw the clouds on the horizon, swirling ever more violently, as if stirred by an invisible hand. A sharp, cold wind whistled past, carrying a chilling aura. "Whatever's chasing it, it's definitely not good," Bruce muttered. Harry gripped his wand nervously, his eyes fixed on the direction the dragon had disappeared. Suddenly, a sharp hissing sound echoed from the sky, a sound that seemed to pierce the soul and sent a chill through Harry. "Should we get out of here?" Harry asked. Faced with unknown danger, he chose to be cautious. Bruce nodded. Bravery didn't mean recklessness. If Harry continued to approach under such circumstances, it would be foolish. But then, a question crossed Bruce's mind. Could this crystal ball world really harbor creatures more dangerous than a fire dragon? In terms of danger, a fire dragon is already a 5x level magical creature, the highest level. Even more dangerous than a fire dragon. Could this tournament be so grandiose? Bruce preferred to believe someone was playing tricks within the swirling clouds than to believe some truly terrifying creature existed within. Perhaps this was all part of the plan? But why was it designed this way? Bruce watched the fire dragon fleeing in the distance, and an idea suddenly occurred to him. He wasn't sure if it was right, but it was worth a try. Meanwhile, the fire dragon slowly descended to the top of a nearby hill, looking very weak. "Let's go see how the fire dragon is doing," Bruce suddenly said. "Are you sure?" Harry, unable to follow Bruce's train of thought, expressed some doubt at the suggestion. "Don't worry, if anything goes wrong, I can guarantee your safety." After calming Harry down, Bruce led him toward the summit. The hill wasn't high, and the summit would be within easy reach. The dragon lay sprawled on the ground, its body covered in wounds from multiple blows, black smoke billowing from them. Its eyes were half closed, and its breath was faint. Those wounds, Bruce observed from a distance and realized that the wounds weren't actually deep, but they were sapping the dragon's strength, leaving it looking half dead. Sure enough, Bruce confirmed his assumption. This chase segment was a deliberate attempt to give students the opportunity to form bonds with other magical creatures. Otherwise, even if the participating warriors tried their best, it would be difficult to recruit them as companions in such a short time. "Harry, think of a way to heal its wounds," Bruce whispered. "Heal it?" Harry was stunned. Was Bruce really talking to him? He wasn't the best at this sort of thing. "It's okay. Just be brave and your best. Believe in yourself." Harry took a deep breath, knowing Bruce wouldn't ask him that for no reason. Although filled with doubt and trepidation, he decided to give it a try. Harry slowly crouched down and approached the dragon. He could sense the fiery aura emanating from the dragon, and an unsettling black aura emanating from the wound. He closed his eyes, trying to recall the healing spells he'd learned in magic class. Heal as before. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, waved his wand, and whispered a healing spell. A faint beam of light shot out from the tip of his wand, slowly landing on the dragon's wound. But as soon as the light touched the wound, it seemed to be deflected by a powerful force, and the black smoke from the wound only grew thicker. No, Harry was discouraged. This was the only healing spell he knew, and there was really no other way. "The spell is working," Bruce noticed. "It just won't penetrate the black smoke." "Harry, you need to strengthen your faith and believe in yourself. The power of a spell can fluctuate with your emotions, a phenomenon not uncommon in this world." Harry wiped the sweat from his forehead and decided to try again. Meanwhile, on the Quidditch pitch, the Hogwarts faculty and students watched Harry's performance with a wave of worry. Can Harry do it? He doesn't seem to have learned any advanced healing spells, Professor McGonagall asked Snape beside her. "I've taught Harry a few useful potion recipes," Snape said with a hint of regret. He cared deeply for Harry. "It's a pity we can't find the ingredients in the crystal ball right now." A row behind them, Hagrid was sobbing and wiping away tears with a large, coarse handkerchief. "It's so pitiful. How could that dragon have such a misfortune?" The gamekeeper, a lover of all magical creatures, had already put himself in the dragon's shoes. "If only I were in the crystal ball," Hagrid choked back a sob. "I'm sure I could make that dragon fully heal." On the podium, Dumbledore was also glued to the screen. But his gaze wasn't directed at Harry, but at Bruce. The old headmaster could see that Harry hadn't realized the purpose of this scheme. It was Bruce who had been pushing him along. But why didn't Bruce come himself? "Don't you even care about dragons?" Dumbledore muttered to himself. "But dragons are already powerful enough magical creatures within the crystal ball, Bruce. If you ask too much, you might end up with nothing." Inside the crystal ball, Harry gripped his wand tightly with both hands, concentrating intently as he chanted the spell again. His body trembled slightly, and magic flowed continuously from his body, pouring into the wand. The wand began to tremble violently, and a dazzling light shot out from its tip, enveloping the dragon. Small beads of sweat formed on Harry's forehead, but he persisted, persevering. This time, his attempt was visibly effective. In the light, the dragon's wounds began to heal, and the black smoke gradually dissipated. The dragon's eyes slowly opened, and it gazed at Harry with an inscrutable look. Harry breathed a sigh of relief. He felt a little weak, but if he could heal the dragon, this weakness was worth it. This dragon seems quite intelligent, Bruce's voice boomed from behind Harry. A typical dragon wouldn't show such gratitude. At that moment, Bruce remembered what Professor Gale had previously promised him. A certain bat in the crystal ball possessed a personality of its own. Now it seemed it wasn't just that bat. Perhaps all the magical creatures in this microcosm possessed, to varying degrees, a higher intelligence than their kind. Chapter 313, There is a problem with the championship. But Bruce quickly shook his head, dismissing his previous speculation. No, I'm a bit crazy. Magical creatures are highly intelligent, so what's so strange about that? Katoom's owl companions, even though they aren't magical creatures, were able to play house with Katoom. Creatures in the magical world are all very intelligent, Bruce thought. They just don't want to get close to humans, so they look just like other animals. Unless there's something like a crawling mouth, it's hard to sense the specialness of these creatures. It's all because of that bat sense last night. I'm paranoid about everything now. Bruce looked up at the transparent dome, thinking silently, Katoom, you must investigate the strange truth behind this match. At this moment, in the stands of the Quidditch pitch, the others were watching Bruce's performance with a hint of confusion. Why? How could he act so relaxed, seemingly without a hint of nervousness? He had clearly seen through the plan to hunt the dragon, yet he handed the weakened dragon over to him, showing no intention of taming it himself. In the crystal ball, the dragon was already a powerful creature. Bruce would have found it hard to find a better option. Why wasn't he in a hurry? Unless, Hermione frowned and muttered, Bruce, it seems like he doesn't want to participate in the competition at all. He was just messing around. Why? Katoom stood at the highest point of the owl kennel at Hogwarts Castle. He summoned all the owls to help him search every corner of the castle. My lord, what exactly do you want us to find? One of the owls asked. Katoom's explanation was a bit vague. I can't describe it to you. Just observe if there's anything extra in the castle, like chests or cabinets. The little owls were all puzzled, but they didn't dare to ask any more questions. They just scattered aimlessly, searching for things that shouldn't be in Hogwarts Castle. After all the owls had left, Katoom sighed. He didn't really know what he was looking for. But there should be a box capable of holding a person, much like the one Barty Crouch Jr. used to hold Moody in the original novel. Bruce and Katoom had discussed something about the tournament, a theory that had arisen after discussion. This speculation, unsubstantiated by evidence, stemmed solely from Bruce's bat sense. Just yesterday, the day before the tournament, Bruce experienced an unprecedented sense of danger, so intense it was almost palpitating, nearly causing Batboy to faint. This had never happened before, and it could only mean one thing: the impending danger could very well kill Bruce. And not just Bruce, Katoom might not be immune either. The owl, of course, was deeply concerned. He discussed numerous possibilities with Bruce and devised various countermeasures. But whether they could survive this or not remained uncertain. All they could do was to leave it to fate. Katoom didn't have to wait long before a little owl hurried over, shouting, My lord! I found something. What discovery? Katoom leaped up. Take me there. He quickly followed a little owl through the corridor and saw the strange discovery it had mentioned. At that moment, Katoom's face was filled with rage. Before him was indeed a cabinet, but it was filled with all sorts of colorful women's clothing, some even covered in sequins, looking incredibly extravagant. These belonged to Rita Skeeter. Hogwarts Castle had been seeing a lot of guests lately, and their luggage certainly didn't belong there. Katoom felt like cursing, feeling like he'd made a wasted trip, but he held it in. After all, it was his fault for not giving clear instructions. He couldn't blame anyone else. That's not it. Katoom stroked the little owl's head, his attitude unprecedentedly friendly. Go look for it again, and let me know if you find anything new. Yes, the little owl nodded vigorously, having never expected such kindness from the king, known for his volatile temper. Perhaps it was because he was the first to discover something, and so the king treated him with special favor. At that moment, a strange thought crossed the little owl's mind. King Katoom was, after all, a student owl, not a native of Hogwarts, and he would eventually graduate and leave. By then, the throne that once belonged to Katoom would naturally become vacant. The title of King of Owls would fall to another owl. Who would that be? Could it be me? The thought of this made the little owl tremble, feeling a path of advancement before him, a bright future beckoning. He was suddenly filled with fighting spirit. Don't worry, "My king," the little owl solemnly assured Katoom. "Even if I have to turn all of Hogwarts upside down, I will find the thing you speak of." With that, he flew away without looking back, brimming with energy. Then, just as he left, another little owl flew over, shouting a discovery. Katoom followed and saw it was also someone's luggage. He searched through it, but found nothing special, so he simply put it back in its original place. "That's not it," Katoom reassured the owl with a smile. "It's okay, keep looking, and report back to me if you find anything." Like the previous owl, this one seemed to have come up with something strange and flew off with great enthusiasm. "What a stupid idea," Katoom couldn't help but complain. This back and forth was extremely inefficient. But there was no other way. After all, his knowledge of Hogwarts Castle wasn't as good as the owl's. If he searched on his own, the consequences of missing anything would be fatal. He had no choice but to put in more effort. Hogwarts Castle was now mostly deserted. Everyone had gathered on the Quidditch pitch to watch the championship. And it was clear that the match wasn't going to end soon. The wizards had been prepared for this, and even if it dragged on, they wouldn't be surprised. After all, there was a Quidditch match that lasted 3 months, and they had persevered. This gave Katoom time. While he didn't expect 3 months, it was enough to search the entire castle. Soon, half a day had passed. Katoom lost count of how many people's luggage he'd examined, how many little owls he'd encouraged. But finally, one little owl made a discovery that brought a surprise. Katoom was overjoyed the moment he saw it. "Bubbles, it's you." This was the first little owl he'd bullied, the one who'd once entered the room of requirement with him. Unexpectedly, Bubbles had memorized the way to open the room of requirement. While all the owls were searching the classrooms and other people's rooms, only Bubbles had made it inside. And then he made a surprising discovery. It was a shabby green chest. In a very inconspicuous place, a faint symbol was engraved, easily missed. Katoom had seen that symbol before. A python and a skull coexisted, a symbol that appeared at the Quidditch World Cup, a less than dark symbol. After all this trouble, it's still in the room of requirement. Katoom found it a little amusing, but then realized that perhaps the chest wasn't originally in the room of requirement. But Bubbles' desire to find something was so strong that the room of requirement granted its wish. "Great. So you're the little owl who takes my orders most seriously." Katoom hugged Bubbles and patted his head affectionately. "From today on, you are Hogwarts chief owl, second only to one owl, above all others." Katoom's reward made Bubbles feel a little dizzy. This immense wealth had finally been his. "Let me see what's inside this chest." Katoom released Bubbles and tried to open the chest. He first tried a wizard's method, but after several spells, the lock wouldn't budge. So annoying, no wonder Katoom resorted to other methods. He stretched out his wings and began to spin in circles. Soon, a golden teleportation circle appeared before him. This was the magic of camouflage. On the other side of the teleportation circle was the interior of the chest. Katoom didn't open the chest, but instead created a tunnel between the two ends. He poked his head inside. Inside the box, a different world unfolded. At the bottom lay a large pit, like a basement. On the floor, about 3 meters deep, lay a figure, emaciated and seemingly asleep. Sure enough, Katoom laughed. These dark magicians all used similar methods. Barty Crouch Jr. used them, and so did the mastermind this time. "Let me see who you are." Katoom flew in and approached the imprisoned figure. He knew the man only a few times, and it took the owl a while to discern his identity from his unrecognizable face. It was Ludo Bagman, director of the Department of Magic and Sports. "So you're the problem," Katoom exclaimed. No wonder the format of this tournament had changed so drastically. After all, as director, he certainly had the power to adjust the tournament's content. No one else could have achieved such an effect. Now, there was a Bagman inside the box, and another on the podium outside. Katoom flew out of the box without hesitation, not even bothering to rescue Bagman. He wasn't a good person either, a compulsive gambler. In the books, he deliberately bet on Harry winning the tournament, then abused his power to help Harry win, hoping to pull off an upset and win a large sum of money. A gambler's fate befalls him. He deserves to continue to suffer. Katoom flew out of the box, his owl instincts urging him to fly out, but he quickly stopped and slapped his forehead. "How stupid of me. Just to sap Harold." He paused for a few seconds, not disappearing from his spot. "Huh?" Katoom noticed something was wrong. "Why can't I dissap Harold?" Hogwarts Castle had a counter spell against apparition for students, but it didn't work against owls and house elves. But now, disintegration wasn't working. No, that's not right. Katoom realized something was wrong and tried to separate again. He vanished immediately, reappearing on the other side of the room. Apparition works. There's a problem at the endpoint, Katoom instantly understood. The problem wasn't Hogwarts Castle, but the Quidditch pitch. That area must have been cordoned off after some incident. Damn it, Bruce. With something so serious happening, why didn't you just contact me telepathically? Katoom cursed, speeding towards the Quidditch pitch. Even as he cursed, Katoom's mind was constantly trying to contact Bruce. But there was no response. Previously, Bruce had always been upset by the owl's lack of response to his messages. Now, Katoom finally felt it feeling, and it was truly unpleasant. Although the owl could confirm through telepathy that Bruce had survived, the silence still worried Katoom. Bruce, what on earth has happened to you? Time flashed back to a moment earlier. At the Quidditch pitch, everyone was nervously watching the magic curtain, especially the Hogwarts faculty and students. Several warriors had already found their own magical companions, but Bruce, despite the high hopes placed on him, remained unsuccessful. He had encountered numerous opportunities to tame a powerful enough magical creature, but in the end, he had chosen not to. This attitude had already angered the delegations from other schools. HMPH. Youthful arrogance, Karkaroff sneered. You must be conceited, thinking only the strongest creatures are worthy of you. I've seen so many people like you, Igor. Dumbledore's face remained that faint smile, but his voice was devoid of any emotion. Don't presume on a child like that, eh? Karkaroff choked for a moment, thinking for a moment, but ultimately, he didn't object. Just a simple objective assessment of Bruce had made Dumbledore so angry. It seemed that old man Albus was really partial to Bruce. I won't argue with you, Karkaroff thought to himself. I treat all my students the same, even Crumb. As soon as this thought occurred to him, Crumb's face appeared on the magical screen. Karkaroff's face lit up with joy, looking at his favorite student. However, he soon noticed something was wrong. Wait, he stood up suddenly, bumping into Madame Maxime, the headmistress of Bobaston, without even a word of apology. Crumb's not right, Karkaroff shouted. He's being controlled. It's the Imperious Curse. It has to be. He could recognize it because he had used it many times as a Death Eater and was extremely experienced. The Imperious Curse? The crowd suddenly erupted in an uproar, and everyone looked at Crumb on the screen. They saw that he was indeed not right, and his movements were very mechanical. At this moment, he happened to be in front of Bruce and Harry. Chapter 314, Beyond the Crystal Ball, There's a Bigger Crystal Ball. Crumb, what's up? Harry actually had a good impression of Crumb. He was the best player at the World Cup, after all. However, Crumb ignored Harry completely. He extended his wand and pointed it high into the sky. A flash of red light, like a firework, shot from the tip of his wand, soaring into the sky before suddenly exploding and bursting like a firework. Then, a gigantic skull appeared, a giant python coiled around it. That mark? Harry's eyes widened, remembering what happened on the Quidditch pitch. That's right. That thing that looked so much like the Dark Mark. George had been wrongly accused of releasing the mark and was under investigation by the Ministry of Magic. He hadn't expected it. Crumb? Thinking back, he had indeed been there. Harry was stunned, and the stands erupted in uproar. George was gritting his teeth, wishing he could rush into the magical veil and have a physics exchange with Crumb. Ever since they were little, he'd always been the one to play tricks on others, and now Crumb hadn't said a word, leaving him with a bitter end. Recalling his father's stance on his behalf with the Ministry of Magic, George felt that he would never be able to forgive Crumb. Calm down, George. Fred was the first to notice something was wrong with George. He comforted him. It's okay, don't think about it anymore, it's all in the past. George's chest heaved violently, and it took him a long time to calm down. I'm going to settle this with him sooner or later, he said through gritted teeth. George's reaction was already huge, but someone in the stands reacted even more violently. No, Karkaroff covered his face and screamed in pain. The headmaster, who had just boasted about treating every student equally, was now driven mad for his favorite student. This is impossible. Crumb is being controlled. He's a victim too. Karkaroff no longer cared about hiding his identity as a Death Eater and shouted directly to the people around him. That's the Imperious Curse. I recognize it. Calm down, Igor. Dumbledore helped him sit down. We'll figure it out, Dumbledore. What are you waiting for? Karkaroff's expression twisted as he accused Dumbledore. Krum has met with an accident. It's the work of the dark arts. You should have stopped the game and protected the students. The key to stop the crystal ball isn't in my hands, it's with Bagman. Dumbledore sighed deeply. But now, Bagman has vanished. Vanished? Only then did Karkaroff notice that the director of physical education, who had been sitting in the front row, was gone. He had vanished, right in front of everyone. When did he? I don't know, Igor. Dumbledore's expression was more solemn than Karkaroff had ever seen him. The last time the old headmaster felt this sense of helplessness was when he faced the three resurrected founders simultaneously. If I'm not mistaken, the Bagman we saw earlier was probably someone else impersonating him. Dumbledore extended his hand and waved it into the distance, and the crystal ball flew into his hand. If we force this crystal ball open, the safety of the students inside cannot be guaranteed. Looking into the crystal ball from the outside, one can still see the exquisite island. The only two options now are to find Bagman and get the key, or for the warriors inside to crack it from the inside. Other than that, we can only wait. Dumbledore's hands were steady, not letting the ball shake at all. The magic screen was still broadcasting the scene inside the crystal ball live, and Harry and Krum had already started fighting. Crucio, Drowsy, the two spells collided with each other and connected into a dazzling magic line in midair, and sparks like magma burst out and spread in all directions. The surrounding air was squeezed by this force, making a whistling sound. Harry then waved his wand, trying to control the surrounding stones to fly towards Krum. But Krum just used a simple barrier spell to instantly block the flying stones, and they fell to the ground one after another. Bruce watched from the side and found that Harry's state was a little strange. If Harry seemed extremely nervous before the game started, even after drinking the calming potion, he still looked guilty. But now, he has completely entered the combat state, and he has been fighting back and forth with Krum, and he is not at a disadvantage for the time being. So you are a practical player, Bruce came to the conclusion in his heart. He almost got to know Harry all over again. Good job. Next, Bruce didn't intend to watch Harry fight anymore. He pulled out his wand and recited the spell casually. Petrify all. Krum was trying to avoid Harry's magic at this time, and he didn't notice Bruce's attack next to him at all. He was hit by the spell as expected, and half of his body was instantly petrified. He couldn't stand steadily and knelt on one knee. Huh? Seeing the other party like this, Harry instantly breathed a sigh of relief. Be careful, Harry. Bruce, who was experienced in combat, guessed that he would suffer a big loss when he saw Harry like this. Sure enough, Krum didn't give up. He endured the pain, supported his body with his wand, and chanted the last powerful spell. Avada Kedavra. A green light shot towards Harry in an instant. Harry was caught off guard by this move, and he had no time to react, but then, a stone wall appeared out of thin air in front of him, blocking the deadly spell for him. Faint on the ground, Bruce then knocked Krum unconscious, making him lose his last threat. Logically speaking, you are dead now. Bruce then put away his wand and looked at Harry. Remember this in the future, if your opponent has not completely lost his combat effectiveness, don't take it lightly. Harry did not respond. He was still in shock from having a close brush with death. The people in the stands were already in a panic. Avada Kedavra? Used by a student? Karkaroff, I'm afraid you'll have to explain this later. Dumbledore's tone finally turned cold, and the way he addressed Karkaroff also lost its original intimacy. Where on earth did a student who hasn't even graduated learn the Avada Kedavra? I didn't teach that, Karkaroff retorted subconsciously. He didn't lie. He had a criminal record, so how could he dare to teach Krum such a thing? He was also wondering, where could Krum learn it from? Some little girls in the stands were already crying. They wanted to leave the stands and return to the safety of the castle. But the teachers stood up and stopped them from walking around. This was a joint order from Dumbledore and other headmasters. Perhaps, those children did not notice that there was an invisible barrier on the dome of the Quidditch field, preventing them from entering or leaving. Dumbledore had a crystal ball containing a miniature world in his hand. And he himself was locked in a larger crystal ball. Chapter 315 Salazar returns. When Katoom arrived at the Quidditch pitch and saw the scene before him, everything clicked. No wonder I couldn't contact Bruce, he sighed. Before Katoom's eyes, a vast bubble-like barrier enveloped the entire Quidditch pitch, hovering silently in the air. Katoom and Bruce's telepathic connection remained unbroken as long as they were in the same world. But now, their connection was lost, indicating that this bubble-like crystal ball had become a world unto itself. No wizard in Harry's world could achieve this. It seemed another world was interfering. Katoom thrust his wings into the small leather pouch on his chest and snatched out the tiny sky comet dragon, Harley. Harley was curled up in a ball, asleep. Stop sleeping. Wake up. Katoom lifted a piece of promethium and poked it against Harley's nose. Ouch! The little silver dragon suddenly opened its eyes, its pupils gleaming, and bit down. If Katoom hadn't quickly retracted its wings, he would have been bitten as well. Katoom had always been quite patient with Harley. Here, take this. Katoom pulled a notebook containing countless Gotham villains from his pocket and handed it to Harley. This isn't edible, don't tear it up. Ouch! Harley, never particularly interested in paper, held the notebook in his mouth, his wide eyes fixed on Katoom. What should he do next? Get this into the barrier, into Bruce's hands, Katoom said. Believe in yourself, you can do it. Ouch! Red lightning began to flash around Harley's body, and in the blink of an eye, he vanished from Katoom's wings. Then, Katoom felt the small leather bag open. Harley went back and forth with incredible efficiency. After completing his mission, he immediately returned to the small leather bag to sleep. Eat and sleep and eat. I don't know who he is. Katoom shook his head, grumbling helplessly, but said nothing more. Bruce is a lucky guy. I don't have to worry about him from now on. The owl folded its wings behind its back and looked up at the floating barrier. I want to see who's causing this trouble. Bruce felt something drop into his arms. Looking down, he saw the Gotham notebook. Was it from Harley? To be so fast he couldn't even sense it, only the speed force could achieve that. Bruce didn't know why Katoom had given him this notebook. But he'd keep it for now, it wouldn't be a mistake. Perhaps the owl had a different plan. At that moment, a sharp scream suddenly echoed from the Crystal Ball Island, and a dark figure flew towards the mark in the sky. It was a giant bat. However, the bat's appearance changed. Its flesh vanished like a shadow, leaving only its skeleton in flight. Then the skeleton broke apart, the bones reformed, and finally, it transformed into a bony snake. Outside the crystal ball, Professor Gale felt a sharp pain on his forehead. Something was wrong. He was thinking back to everything about the bat. Gale had placed the bat there, a magical creature specially chosen for Bruce, and to that end, Gale had deliberately played it a mystery, hoping to pique Bruce's interest. But, what was the origin of this bat? It was as if he had suddenly become aware of its existence, then sought to capture it and place it in the crystal ball. From beginning to end, he hadn't noticed anything unusual. Something was wrong. Gale suddenly realized it was a confusion spell. Someone had cast an extremely powerful confusion spell on him. There must have been a battle. Gale searched his memories, searching intently, and naturally, he quickly discovered something amiss. I fought someone, and I lost. No, with my personality, if I lost in battle, I would have fought with all my might. In that case, he would have suffered irreparable injuries. So, the more likely possibility wasn't a defeat, but rather a moment's surprise during the fight, a hidden attack. Not many people can do that, and that bone snake makes me think of one person. Clearly, there was only one person Gale could suspect, Salazar Slytherin. In his lifetime, he had been a supreme legilimency master, capable of reading a person's entire mind with a single glance. Salazar, naturally, was no problem with a confusion spell, a spell involving thoughts. Salazar confused me, allowing me to send the bone serpent, disguised as a bat, into the crystal ball. Gale pondered, wondering why Salazar had done this. He himself was a master strategist, but he couldn't fathom Salazar's intentions. It wasn't about wisdom or age, it was simply a matter of vision. Unbeknownst to Gale, Salazar had already seen things he had never seen before. Inside the crystal ball, the bone serpent finally reached the mark, merging into one. Instantly, a blinding light burst forth from the crystal ball. The light, like tangible flames, caused everyone around to involuntarily close their eyes and step back. Bruce did the same. Everything happened too fast for him to stop. The light gradually faded, revealing a strange figure slowly emerging from the sky where the bone serpent had been. It was Salazar Slytherin, finally back at Hogwarts. Though his body was reduced to a skeleton, his soul, like a turquoise flame, flickered in his dark eye sockets. His spine, like a serpentine snake, supported his entire body, faintly emitting an eerie power. At that moment, everyone outside the crystal ball was stunned. So that's how it is, a girl among the students whispered. Ravenna, a Ravenclaw, understood everything. Separating the body and soul and sending them separately to Hogwarts will completely avoid the attention of Gryffindor and me. Salazar's body had been sent in disguised as a magical creature, while his soul had been hidden within the mark. Perhaps Krum has been controlled from the beginning, Ravenclaw thought. His wand was tampered with to contain the soul within the mark. Although he had figured it all out, Ravenclaw could do nothing. The crystal ball was a world unto itself, beyond the reach of this universe's magic. It seems you've also found a dimensional tunnel to another world, Ravenclaw worried about the children within. What on earth was Slytherin, possessing otherworldly magic, planning? Salazar slowly descended in front of Bruce and Harry. His jaw creaked, and his non-existent vocal cords uttered a sound. "Bruce Wayne," he whispered, "now, no one will disturb us." Chapter 316 Salazar's Purpose. No one will disturb us. Harry was stunned. He was standing right next to Bruce, yet Salazar's words and actions completely ignored him. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. Meanwhile, Bruce, upon hearing these words, alarm bells went off. Without hesitation, he reacted as quickly as possible. He grabbed Harry's arm and threw him to the ground. Sure enough, the next moment, a flash of green light appeared. The Avada Kedavra. If Harry had stood there, he would have been struck by it. Salazar was not Voldemort. Harry had no chance of survival under his Avada. Bruce gasped, replaying the scene. He hadn't seen it. Bruce hadn't seen how Salazar had cast the spell. He hadn't drawn his wand, uttered no spell, or even lifted a finger. He had only seen the appearance of a green light. It was simply impossible to prevent. "You managed to escape." Salazar's voice sounded a bit old, the soul flames flickering in the skull's eye sockets. "So that's how it is. It seems you possess a powerful gift for foresight in life or death situations." Salazar, incredibly experienced, recognized Bruce's bad sense instantly. Bruce stood up, while Harry remained shattered on the ground. The boy who had survived the ordeal now understood that he had just walked through limbo again. "Salazar Slytherin," Bruce said expressionlessly, looking at the skeleton mage. "Do we know each other? You're making such a fuss right off the bat." Salazar Slytherin's withered skeleton crackled, almost mocking him. Bruce's attempt to extract information was so obvious it was instantly apparent. "Do you need to know me?" Suddenly, Salazar's magical energy surged wildly, igniting the air around him, a fiery, turbulent atmosphere. He made no unnecessary movements, simply standing there in silence. But the magical fluctuations emanating from him were like a surging tide, pressing down on Bruce and Harry wave after wave. Bruce tried to raise his wand to resist. But he found that his supreme wand seemed to be suppressed by an invisible force, and he could not cast any effective magic at all. His legs felt as heavy as if they were filled with lead, and the magic seemed to be squeezing his soul out of his body. Harry, standing by, felt the powerful oppression and his face turned pale. He tried to stand up, but found that his body was like being weighed down by a 1,000-pound burden, unable to move. Salazar's soul flame burned more and more vigorously, and the flame seemed to contain endless dark power. Outside the crystal ball, Gryffindor watched this scene, his brows suddenly frowning. As Salazar's opponent for many years, he had never seen him use such means. It looked like all the magic of others was banned. "Salazar, what have you been through in the years since your resurrection?" Gryffindor whispered. "Have you brought the power of another world to us?" Bruce gritted his teeth, trying to resist Salazar's power. However, the more he summoned his magic, the more terrifying the pressure on his body became. It seemed as if it would crush him completely. "Is that so?" Bruce gritted his teeth, finally understanding what Salazar had done. Right now, the magic within him was like poison, constantly corroding his spirit. So, there was only one answer. At this moment, the more he tried to use magic, the weaker he became. The only way to fight Salazar was to give up magic. Bruce took a deep breath and slowly lowered his wand. The moment it landed, the invisible force that was suppressing him seemed to pause for a moment. Bruce felt his body lighten. Although the pressure from Salazar's magic was still strong, at least it was no longer weakening him further. Now, they could finally talk on equal terms. At Bruce's action, the flames in the eye sockets of his skull flickered. He let out a dry laugh. "Very clever boy. It seems you won't hold me back." "Hold me back?" Bruce didn't understand why Salazar would say that. He saw no possibility of cooperation between them. Seeing Bruce's puzzled expression, Salazar's withered skeleton crackled, as if preparing for what was to come. Salazar slowly raised his bony hand, the soul fire in his eye sockets pulsing more fiercely. The air around him began to swirl, starting with a gentle breeze, then slowly gaining strength. The wind swept up the dust and rocks from the ground, forming small whirlwinds. Bruce felt as if he were at the center of a storm, the wind howling and lashing him. Salazar thrust his hand forward, a black line emerging from his palm and rapidly spreading outward. Wherever it passed, space seemed to distort, and the light dimmed. Magic formed a vast circular outline around Bruce and Salazar, like the frame of a vast cage. Then, black energy began to fill the spaces between the lines of magic, like black glass gradually taking shape. In the blink of an eye, Bruce was surrounded by pure darkness. There was a sound of bones rubbing against each other, as if Salazar had snapped his fingers. The scene before Bruce's eyes lit up, and the skeleton mage stood before him. The light Bruce saw was the soul fire in Salazar's eyes. "Now, we can have a proper conversation." Salazar's tone was now extremely calm, a stark contrast to the frantic wizard from earlier. Indeed, this was the demeanor of a legendary magician. Yet, Bruce remained wary of him. After all, that Avada Kedavra curse was genuine. Salazar waved his hand, and 2 chairs rose from the pitch-black ground. Salazar sat down, motioning for Bruce to relax as well. "You shouldn't consider me an enemy," he said to Bruce. "On the contrary, we'll be living together for a long time. If you persist in being so hostile to me, you'll probably suffer." "I don't understand what you're talking about." Bruce shook his head. Of course, he couldn't guess what Salazar meant. The information he had was too limited. "How?" Salazar chuckled, looking up, his emerald soul flame flickering. "At this point, are you still playing dumb? You have the ability to travel between different worlds, right?" End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.